You love podcasts, the stories, the laughs, the unexpected turns. But when this episode ends, the silence starts. Not anymore. Audiobooks.com turns that silence into your next great adventure. With over 450,000 titles, from bestsellers to hidden gems, your love for listening just found its new best friend. And because you already know the joy of audio, we're giving you 3 free audiobooks to start your journey. Imagine your favorite podcast, now with unlimited episodes. That's audiobooks.com. Keep the story going. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcastfree today. Because for podcast lovers like you, the end of an episode is just the beginning. That's audiobooks.com/podcastfree.
This podcast is brought to you by patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Head there to check out exclusive podcasts like Talking Futurama, Talk King of the Hill, the What a Cartoon Movie podcast, and tons more.
I heartily endorse this event or product.
Ahoy hoy everybody, and welcome to Talking Simpsons, the podcast that carries a terrible curse. I'm your host, the bathing beauty Bob Mackey, and this is our chronological exploration of The Simpsons. Who is here with me today, as always?
Hey, it's Henry Gilbert, and I just want attention.
And this week's episode is Treehouse of Horror 3.
Behold mighty Caesar in all his glory!
Go!
This episode originally aired on October 29th, 1992, and as always, Henry will tell us what happened on this mythical day in real world history.
Oh my God!
Happy Halloween, Bobby. Madonna releases her erotica album. A River Runs Through It can't beat Under Siege at the box office, and Wario debuts to the world in Super Mario Land 2, The 6 Golden Coins.
So we're on A River Runs Through It, eh? I was thinking about this yesterday for no reason. I have no idea why, but in my head I was thinking, which one is A River Runs Through It and which one is Legends of the Fall?
They are basically the same movie in my mind. I just think of the boxes, but yeah.
One of them has Brad Pitt fly fishing.
I think he's in both those movies, I believe. I know he's in River Runs Through It. I think he's in both. But yeah, it was one of multiple movies where they thought like, oh, Brad Pitt is the new Tom Cruise and that he's going to be like a heartthrob in movies and we have to put him in important movies about, coming of age stories based on boring old novels and all that. They never really hit. It wasn't until Brad Pitt became like a weirdo or played the oddball like in 12 Monkeys.
Yeah. That's the first, to me, the first weirdo Brad Pitt role.
That's when I knew he wasn't just like, a hunky guy or whatever. And then Fight Club soon after that. But yeah, like he's so boring in Interview with a Vampire comparatively to what we know Brad Pitt can do. I thought in Interview with a Vampire, Tom Cruise is having a lot more fun as finally getting to be as gay as he allows himself to be.
Absolutely. A pretty good movie. I did enjoy that. I saw it for the second time recently, and it's a very cheesy and very horny, and lots of San Francisco is happening in that movie. Well, in the framing device. I was like, I've been to that building, or I've been near that building.
Thinking of it recently because I watched What We Do in the Shadows and the newest season, and I'm just reminded, like, Antonio Banderas' character is a favorite character, or an inspiration for the Guillermo character in the show. He was a big fan. I think it was a sexual awakening for him as a youngster.
Interesting. So this Madonna erotica album, this was released in tandem with her sex book, which I believe we cover on Itchy and Scratchy the movie, that episode.
The book and this come out at the same time, but the book doesn't hit the charts until the next week. But erotica is the big album. It's a big concept album full of like, it is her going, she's been getting sexier every album. And this is when she's like, all right, time for a fully sexual album. I mean, and Pushed is like, she is selling pornography. Like, that's what erotica is.
This was basically, if you're going to masturbate to the book, this can be an aid to you. Like, it will really set the mood. Hey, and this is ushering in the era of Slick Willy, right? He's just
true.
around the corner, folks.
Yeah, it's pretty fitting that Slick Willie, in just 5 days after this, will be elected president. The biggest hits from it were the title track, Erotica, and then a song called Deeper and Deeper. But neither of those, I mean, I can hear Erotica in my head if I really think about it, but I don't think of those as like big Madonna songs to me.
Yeah, I was just looking at the track listing. I didn't recognize anything. And my wife and I were talking about this yesterday, and I think that if I were to see Madonna live, I would have loved to have seen her in 1990. But if I would have asked to see Madonna in 1990, they would have found a child home to put me in to rehabilitate me.
See, but you should have just pointed to that video where she strips for that like 12-year-old boy. And
Exactly.
Be like, he wants that.
I watched that video a lot as a kid. I wanted to be that boy.
He was a lucky boy.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I forgot about the Erotica album that our pals at Podcast The Ride love talking about the secondary identities of famous pop stars, your Chris Gaines, your Mr. Macfistos. I forgot that Madonna had one too that she debuted for the Erotica album, Mistress Dita.
Oh,
she created. So,
but she didn't guest star on SNL as Mistress Dita.
No, I think she was more in on the jokes. I mean, she promoted Erotica on SNL around this time. I don't believe she became Mistress Dita on the show, but I could be wrong. I was only just reminded of Mistress Dita, the character. Well, I think that's who she is on the cover of the Erotica album too. And but yes, and finally Wario, the nemesis of Mario, his darker half, first debuted on the Game Boy this month.
Hey, yes, a great character. It really was making a Mario for the 90s, and that kids love this gross-out humor with rude characters. The 80s are over, folks. 90s were the decade of Wario. And he's been kind of missing for the past, 15-ish years in terms of just making traditional platformer games with this character. I think it's because Nintendo started outsourcing them. The results weren't great, and there was less demand for traditional Wario fun, which is indie developers are basically making their own Wario games now, like Pizza Tower.
Yeah. I had forgotten that Pizza Tower game was I don't want to blame Shigeru Miyamoto for everything I don't like in Nintendo, but I do feel like that he doesn't like other people making platformers for his characters, even Wario, which I wouldn't even call his character. The guys have to make the developers who would have made those old games. Instead, they make, WarioWare or whatever. They have to be pushed to make a weird thing that's not just a new platformer. And
but so then how do you explain all of those bad Yoshi games?
Yeah, I mean, that's just their horrible mistakes, but I guess there's somebody who's friends with Artoon, I suppose, keeps giving them jobs.
We've lost half the audience now.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking of Wario as well because he was not the voice actor for the commercials in 1992, I'm fairly certain. But
there's no way he was. That's not him.
But the regular Wario voice actor just lost his job,
is that a fair way to put it?
Well, he's very happy about it. He's an ambassador now.
He transitioned to an executive role. It sounds like.
Sure. But Charles Martinet voiced Wario in most of his forms, but not in that. And he is now though not the official voice of Mario anymore. Beside that fact, I did love the original Wario commercial. He's hypnotizing you to love him and hate Mario, which honestly it worked on a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, to quote Bart, worked on me.
Me too.
That was my game for this Christmas. That was the game I got for this Christmas. I really wanted, because Mario Land 1, man, we are getting deep in the weeds here with Mario stuff, but Mario Land 1, I don't care for it, folks. I'm sorry to be controversial here. Mario Land 2, loved it, played it over and over and over again. It was actually a finishable game for a 10-year-old like me.
There was something about the sound effects in the first Mario Land that just made me feel like sad or anxious, like there's this annoying sounds the whole time. But yeah, the second one was cute, but cute in its own way, different from the cuteness of the main Mario games. And then, of course, Wario won in the end and took over the franchise, and they became Super Mario Land 3, Wario Land. And then they just dropped Mario's name from it entirely, and they became the Wario Land games.
He was too big for Game Boy, that Mario. He refused to star in any more platformers.
But then every time he's gone to console, it's not been as big a hit, unfortunately. But Bob has done multiple podcasts on the history of Wario for Retronauts.
Oh, dear Lord, yes. Look up the Retronauts archives for many a Wario podcast to learn the history. And hey, WarioWare. I did a WarioWare podcast as well for that series. So it's been thoroughly covered by me. This episode, though, Treehouse of Horror 3, it is, yes, a classic Treehouse of Horror, but it is probably, no pun intended, the most Frankenstein episode Al Jean and Mike Reiss might have ever put together.
I think it shows how where they were at mentally. They're like, we can mess around with everything in this, right? If we're not totally satisfied with it, we can just reset things, redo things all we want. We don't have to stick with the original jokes. I'm curious if we ever get a chance to talk to Bill Oakley again. I'm curious. This was one of Bill and Joss's first credits on the show as story editors on it, but they came in after it was written, but they must have been there for production. I wonder what they thought about all the ADR that gets added to this episode.
Well, I hope Bill talks to us when he's on stage.
If I hope so. It would be awkward if he didn't talk to us.
We can talk to him through another host. Yeah. I remember talking to Bill and Josh are there. I assume for the rewrite and everything, because their next episode is Marge Gets a Job, and I think they're still freelancers, so I think they're part of the rewrite process on this, or the punching up process. Because we talked to Dan McGrath, and he said his first day on The Simpsons was pitching for that's good, that's bad scene.
Yeah, that's
for
right. Yeah.
the Clown Without Pity segment. So I have to assume that they're there for the post production process of this at least.
I mean, this is where that is very rewrite roomy, and it's Al Jean says on the commentary 88 line changes. I think that might be a little more than there is, but there is quite a lot.
I'm starting to not doubt him, because every time I rewatch this, I notice the lip flaps are a tiny bit off. They almost nailed it with this. Things I didn't notice before, like the Candy Apple Island exchange, I was like, oh, that's ADR too. Wow. I find a new ADR line every time I rewatch this. But it feels like, we'll get to it. I feel like maybe it was because it was their segment. Clown Without Pity has the most edits, all the weirdest in-video fade-ins and fade-outs in the middle of things that looked like they were full scenes that were truncated. They were having too much fun with the video editing software that day.
I think too it's because the second two acts are more about big set pieces and giant things. I think it's harder for them to change things. It's more like change a line, not move a character to an earlier spot or something. But now compared to the last time we covered this, I can track a lot of the changes and tell you what the original things were, because thanks to the Internet Archive, which hope it sticks around, somebody uploaded a very official looking table draft. It is final table draft of the episode. It is dated May 1st, 1992. So this was only 6 months from that till air date, basically, which is a real fast turnaround.
And on the commentary, Al Jean says within the 6 weeks before this aired, they were doing the most changes to it.
Mm-hmm. Which I think that says guys were nervous, they're like, and on top of that, they're still working on the Critic the whole time. And that if this is 6 weeks to air, then Critic is getting hot and heavy in production, because they're, by the end of 1992, they've hired David Merkin. It's starting, or they're about to hire David Merkin.
Everyone is getting very tired. Everyone is leaving the show. It's fun to listen to the commentary again, because on the commentary, Al Jean said they almost didn't do this. They had to be kind of bullied into it by Jay Kogan and Wally Wolodarski, who were the big Treehouse of Horror boosters on the staff. They admit that, we didn't do most of the work. Al Jean and Mike Reiss did. That's why they didn't want to do it. So Treehouse of Horror could have been a thing for just 2 seasons if they didn't keep going. I think this locked it in place as, yes, we're going to just keep doing this. And then it's the highest rated episode every year. It's an event. There's so much promotion just around this episode that it is the biggest tradition of the show.
Well, we talk about running jokes on the show, and that if they do it 3 times, then it's officially a runner. Then this is the 3rd episode of Treehouse, so it becomes officially a runner at that point and is fully set in. Though, I could have seen a world where when David Merkin comes on, if he didn't want to do Treehouse, they probably wouldn't have done the next one if he didn't want to do it. But I think he did definitely want to do it. He loved it.
Thankfully, he was thinking, I can get the most violent things on TV, and this will be my excuse.
So from that table redraft, there's a lot of interesting things I noted. I finally had answers of this line's weird. What did they say before? And it's now there's a lot of it. And there's definitely also stuff where I'm like, that's a clean edit. And I wish, doesn't it suck that this does not have deleted scenes on this episode? I mean, at least there's 2 episodes on this DVD set that have deleted scenes, but what an F up that they do not have all the deleted scenes for this season.
I'd love to see just all the original content that was in what was sent back to them from Korea, basically.
And yeah, but the video editing software, that's something too I hope they never fix. Like, there's several times this episode where I thought, like, if they had the George Lucas instinct to special edition this, they could change a bunch of little things with video, like just color correcting or whatever even. But I hope they never do. I hope it always stays. And I think Matt Groening is the opposite of that and he wants archives to stay pure and be the way it aired. Yeah. As we know, he's a big fan of those. Our pal Thad works on the restoration of classic Fleischer tunes, and Groening attends those screenings a lot in Los Angeles. So I think he's a big fan of accurate restoration processes.
Yeah, maintaining all the clumsy video edits that were made 30 years ago.
You can like literally see the pause button on screen sometimes, it feels like, with these edits.
The video tracking thing pops up.
It's also funny, yeah, that Kogan and Wolodarski, I think they were the first big boosters of the Halloween story. At least like when we interviewed Kogan about the first one, he talked about how like, oh yeah, that they were present for Matt Groening walking into the room and telling them, hey, we should do a Halloween special. See ya. And then walks out, and Sam Simon didn't want to do it, and that they talked him into it. And I also was trying to see, especially with these episodes, I pull back out the Mike Reese's autobio where to see if he has any stories about this specific episode. He didn't have one in this one, but he talked about how like he felt that they didn't have a fully good episode of Treehouse until next season. He says there's usually one segment that sucks, but he wouldn't name which one sucked in this one or was lesser. He did say they usually put it in the middle, but I would say, and I love the first act, but I'd say that's the weakest one of the episode, not King Homer.
Yeah, it's hard for me to decide, but I feel like Treehouse of Horror 4 and 5 are so amazing and strong that I can see why 2 and 3 would seem lesser, but there's still obviously very good stuff in here. This does feel like the weakest one of the first 3, I would say.
Script-wise, I would definitely say that, but also like I think they should have. But Mike Reese, though, he hated the Raven. He thought it's pretentious. He hated they did that one. That was, I think, he said his least favorite of the original run of Treehouses.
We've all come around on that. We do like it now. We actually hate the Bart interludes. You know, when Bart has to jump in and say, "Well, the Raven had a cow, man," and then it's like the kids are distracted enough for them to cut back to Shakespeare. Or sorry, not Shakespeare. Jesus, I'm thinking of zombie Shakespeare. Edgar Allan Poe.
Yes. Yeah, that instinct is similar to this episode's instincts of like, we need to cut back to Homer saying something or whatever. Yeah, it's but yeah, no, I'm glad they decided to stick with Halloween specials. They kept a lot of traditions alive in this episode in post-production as well, but every time there's a major or even slightly minor change from that table draft script, I've made a note of it and will let folks know.
Hooray.
When the big ones happen.
This is the value we provide.
Exactly. Other people, they don't bother reading the old things. They would just say like, I like this when I was a kid. Okay, cool. Like, and hey, I did love this when I was a kid. I was 10 years old. The world was my oyster. This is probably the Treehouse that I could just say from memory closest to accurate. Like even more than next year's, which I like more than this one's. 3, I think I watched the most.
And we also covered Dial Z for Zombie segment in 3 different live shows. So that part I have very etched into my brain.
Wow, yeah. Boy, you've done so many live shows. I actually forgot we did that. The very first clip I could play is actually the first time it diverges from the script already. The Hitchcock intro, not in that table draft script at all. But here, let's hear from Homer.
Good evening. I've been asked to tell you that the following show is very scary, with stuff that might give your kids nightmares. You see, there are some crybabies out there, religious types mostly, who might be offended. If you are one of them, I advise you to turn off your set now. Come on, I dare you. Chicken! Hey.
Homer, did you just call everyone chicken?
No. I swear on this Bible.
That's not a Bible. That's a book of carpet samples.
Ooh, fuzzy.
That's an ooh fuzzy, not fuzzy. Also, listeners, I have to credit Bob here. We've got a new setup here. Bob has been playing the episode behind him on the screen the whole time. You resynced it to that clip perfect.
Unintentional. This will never happen again because right now we're like already in the house.
I thought you actually lined it up like you moved it to be at play there. That's so funny. But yeah, so the Hitchcock opening. Well, first off, as a kid, I thought Alfred Hitchcock was a guy who hosted a thing on Nick at Night. I had in 1992, I got the reference because Alfred Hitchcock or Hitchcock Presents aired on Nick at Night all the time, but I didn't know the full context of it. What about you, Bob?
I think I would respect it more now that I love murder mysteries and crime stories, but I would watch it on Nick at Night, and I would think he was the best part and wondered where he went. Like, where's this funny, bald, fat guy? He's great.
I liked some episodes, but also on Nick at Night, they were showing you the best ones. Like, we didn't appreciate how Nick at Night was basically what this is now for our generation, like, because it was for our parents like, hey, you only remember like 5 episodes of Alfred Hitchcock, right? We're going to show those. Like, you remember the one where the lady kills her husband with a leg of lamb and then serves it to the police officers. Well, here's that episode.
And they point out on the commentary that the joke about this is that Homer is supposed to be fatter than Hitchcock. His actual shadow, his silhouette extends beyond the drawing of a silhouette, but it doesn't really work. It is funny to think like, oh, he's as big as Hitchcock. Haha, he's also a bald guy. But they don't. It's too subtle that he's actually a little fatter than Hitchcock.
It's also funny they've been doing this so long that they start with Marge being a reference on the stage to the Frankenstein opening, and now they're like, well, we've done that twice now. Let's have Homer do it, but he won't be the Frankenstein guy. He'll be Alfred Hitchcock doing it.
And we're done with these after this, right?
Yes, yeah.
This is the last Tombstone and Warning year, and then next year is the last Framing Device year.
Well, actually, then they jump over because the year after that's when Marge says, oh, this is so bad, we're just going to show episodes of Wagon Train.
Oh.
And then Bart takes over the screen.
And it's an Outer Limits parody, okay.
Yes,
yeah.
So, but they don't do it next year, though. Then it's just a full Night Gallery parody. So they do. Technically, there is a host of the first 5 Treehouse of Horrors who introduce you to the show. If you count Bart as the Night Gallery host, but Homer does do the intro in the script, but there's no Hitchcock parody stuff.
What is the intro? Just the typical, religious types mostly? That whole dialogue is there?
So Homer comes out. He is the host of it. He does say the entire, religious types mostly. You might be offended. But then what happens is a zombie from Act 3 comes out and says, is it my time yet? And Homer's like, no, you're at the end of the show. And then the zombie grumbles and walks away. And then instead of the carpet samples thing, it's Homer talking with the zombie off screen about the later in the episode, which is clever, but I like the Alfred Hitchcock thing better.
Yeah, I like complaining about religious types.
Yes, also that he's worried that people are offended or if you're or not worried if they're offended, just telling you well, if you're offended, turn this off now. I think of this more in the Merkin years, but this also is showing you where the gutsiness or the FU spirit of the Simpsons, that they're starting the episode saying turn it off. Come on, turn it off. And they even give you almost a black screen for 17 seconds.
Yeah, that's very Merkin-y. I forgot how long it just stays on the black screen with the now lost to time CRT dot.
Yeah,
that slowly fades out. I mean, we don't need to explain this to people, but go back to the way we was. You're staring at a dot,
right? And that's just because your TV is powering off, and slowly the dot's going to go away. But I also think it's just them filling time with talking over dead air. But it works great as a moment, and that's a book of carpet samples. That's also just a great specific. Every time I see a book of carpet samples, I think of I think of swearing on it.
I also think of getting that as your gift in prison.
That's right. Yeah.
I think there are 3 book of carpet samples jokes in The Simpsons, It was a fun, just random item that you don't think about very often.
And so then after they fill time with that, then it's time for the tombstones that have not been killed yet. They'll be killed next year. Hilarious.
You could tell they're on their way out because they have nothing to add to what they've done so far. So because we're just crapping on Drexel's Class, which was another show. This is the most it's remembered. It's memorialized in this episode, seen a billion times more than Drexel's Class. It was the Simpsons time slot partner before Martin. And they were very mad at Fox over using Bart Simpson footage to advertise Drexel's Class and also other Fox things, because The Simpsons was the Fox show, so they would integrate Simpsons footage into promos for other shows.
Yes, I have a quick 10-second clip here Bob pointed me to. I had forgotten these ads of Drexel meeting Bart Simpson.
He may be the only teacher tough enough to handle Bart Simpson.
Yo, Drexel, eat my shorts.
Excuse me. Drexel's Class starts September 19th.
And there's also one really crazy ad I shared with you for some sitcom. Went on for 2 seasons called True Colors, I believe it was. And essentially the ad is like, what if Bart Simpson was black? The answer is Bart would love him, and he's going to say so in this commercial for True Colors.
This just in. Fox has uncovered a shocking revelation. Recent evidence suggests that Lester Freeman and Bart Simpson may be long-lost brothers.
Shut up!
Note their similar athletic abilities and their distinctive style with the opposite sex. Are Lester and Bart related?
Sort of a hero of yours, isn't he?
Are you kidding? He's my idol.
See for yourself when True Colors moves to Thursday next week.
They reused clips from, especially from Krusty Gets Busted, where it's Bart saying, he's basically my idol, man. They have Bart say that about the lead of True Colors. It was funny to watch those back to back because that Drexel's one, that is somebody cornered Nancy Cartwright or just said to Nancy, hey, could you just say this real quick and then we'll put it in an ad. Clearly between those two, the Gracie film side was like, hey, we're not recording new things for Bart to say to promote your crap. And they rightly saw Drexel's Class as bad and not and beneath them to promote.
Hey, Dabney Coleman is great. I remember watching this show because it was just on after The Simpsons, and it just drew me in. And I was looking at some episodes on YouTube, and actually it's an early role for Brittany Murphy. She's one of the recurring kids in Drexel's Class. She's a Drexel student.
I forget that she was a child actor that early. I mean, that's probably, what didn't help her growing up.
This is just 2 years before Clueless.
Oh, man. Feels longer since I was 10 and then 12 by the time Clueless came out. Those 2 years seem very long.
And then I don't know what they're trying to say here because there's an I'm with Stupid grave, and it's pointing to an R. Buckminster Fuller grave. Looking him up, he did not invent, but he did popularize the geodesic dome that Apu name drops in Who Needs the Quickie Mart. That's all I can tell you folks about this guy.
Which, if you look closely, on top of that tombstone is a geodesic dome, or, it's...
Oh, really?
It's supposed to look like it. I'm not saying they drew it very well, but
okay.
It definitely, that's when I noticed, that's, they put a dome on top of there. But no, I don't fully get it either, and it's not in the script.
Okay. They also seem ashamed of the slapstick tombstone because you see it for just a few frames before you see the American workmanship tombstone, which crumbles in the rain.
My guess is that they cut a joke of a clown falls into the open grave or something as a way of it's slapstick. But I saw another, when I was trying to look up the meaning of it from somebody else or guesses at it, somebody online said, slapstick is an open grave, meaning slapstick isn't dead. That's what they're saying. But,
okay.
But neither of those are in the script. But in the script is Drexel's Class, which shows you they really did hate it that much. They and I think you heard Grading in the commentary say we stopped doing these because Friends would work on these shows and they got mad. But
especially, I just have to assume it was one of the animated shows.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Brad Bird really had nothing to do with the Family Dog cartoon, but I'm sure he didn't like seeing one of the best things he ever did represented as a tombstone on The Simpsons.
I would think he probably didn't like that. Yeah. So in the script though, at those tombstones, I always think of those tombstones as in here, but they're in Act 3. But the only other ones in the OG script that were in this, Ernest burns in hell and retired and loving it. So they really were not into Ernest at this time. They were pretty sick of that guy.
I'm really glad they cut the Ernest tombstone because just 7 years later, not as funny.
No. Also, making fun of Ernest just feels like very like, all right, we get it. You don't like it. I mean, I don't see Ernest as that bad of a thing. I
think children's entertainers have only got more irritating, where Ernest now seems just like a classy Jack Benny figure or something now.
I think they underestimated Barney's acting ability, that he actually is like a good actor, that they just think he's like, oh, this is some stupid clown cashing in on garbage, right? It's like, no, it's actually, he's a really good actor and got typecast in a role that, and then if he didn't smoke and drink so much, we might have gotten to enjoy him into our later years.
We would see him in a Coen Brothers movie at this point.
I bet he'd have been in a 2003 Coen Brothers movie even. Great design on the skeleton family too. I really love that. Yeah, I also like Matt Merchandising Graining. That's a good name. I wonder if he suggested that one or somebody else did. So then it's a Halloween party at the Simpsons place. That's the framing device for this year's episode. You spot many costumes, including Milhouse's radioactive man. But I have several toys of him as radioactive man, or I have one Burger King Kids Club toy I'm holding up here, which was from the 2002 set, and then this really nice painting of him on a little square thing of him as Radioactive Boy is the name of the painting from 2020.
I think that might be from the Big Kids meal era of Burger King.
Oh, you're right. Yes, not the Kids Club is over. It's the Big Kids. Yes, yeah. They marketed those a lot, but I didn't buy them because it was just at the time where I was like, I'm too old I'm 20 now. I'm too old to buy the Happy Meal toys.
I think the last time I got a Happy Style meal was maybe 2003, 2002. Wendy's had Mario Kart toys, and I really wanted them. This is when it was hard to buy Mario toys, believe it or not, folks. And I had a car, and I presumably could have had a kid, so I had a cover, to go through the drive-thru.
They around the same time, and I've put the ads in the 2002 episodes we've been doing of Simpsons. But did you get any of the talking watches from Burger King that were the adult toys they were giving out?
Actually, I have two of them on my bookshelf behind me because friend of the show, Gary Butterfield, and a past guest gave me two of them at a Portland Retro Gaming Expo once. So they're still in the original packaging. Maybe for a live show, I will pry the backs off and see if the battery has not destroyed the insides and add a new one.
I didn't have one. A friend did, and they loved how Homer constantly, his thing is to say burgers, but equipment isn't perfect, and it sounds more like burgers. And we would always just say to each other all the time, burgers. That's one of those fun in-jokes.
The Simpsons will be right back.
Thursday, it's Halloween at The Simpsons.
Behold mighty Caesar in all his glory.
An all-new Simpsons, followed by Martin, Thursday.
Hey everybody, it's Henry here. Welcome to the break that's as relaxing as a book full of carpet samples. And we thank you very much for listening to this week's episode as we enter into the spooky season. And me and Bob are getting settled into our new apartment. Things are starting to get back to normal, and we're settling back in with one of the classic Halloween specials. And me and Bob are only able to cover this as our full-time jobs and go super in-depth into classic episodes of The Simpsons because of supporters at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. That's where listeners like you for $5 a month get every episode of this podcast a week ahead of time and without ads like this one. Plus, you get tons of exclusive podcasts, such as every month a new episode of Talking Futurama and Talking of the Hill, us going super in-depth into classic episodes of both of those series, a brand new one each month, and you get over 150 of our previously released exclusive Patreon podcasts of us covering all the previous episodes of Futurama and King of the Hill, plus every episode of The Critic, every episode of Mission Hill, and many of our favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series. Check it all out for yourself. You're missing out if you don't sign up at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. But if you want something even better than the ethnic comedy of Dugan and Dershowitz, you need to sign up at the $10 level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons, because there you get our premium podcast in addition to all the $5 things I just mentioned. I'm talking about What a Cartoon Movie Podcast, where we cover an animated feature film super in depth, just like we do an episode of The Simpsons, often for over 4, 5, or even 6 hours. This month, we're about to jump into Halloween with Corpse Bride, the spiritual sequel to A Nightmare Before Christmas that we covered a couple of years ago. And there's so many more great ones there. This year we did the Summer of Pixar, covering 4 classic Pixar movies in a row. You can also hear our longest podcast ever, over 6.5 hours, about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Everything from Akira to a Goofy movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse to Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe, and so many more. Almost 5 years worth of What a Cartoon movies at your fingertips if you go one more time at the $10 level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Please check it all out for yourself. Then Homer exposes himself to children. Of course, he'd be arrested now for this. And also in 92, I thought it was pretty risque for Bart to be dressed as Alex from Clockwork Orange.
Yeah. I'm wondering also if Homer reuses this costume for Homercles in Selma, the fish called Selma. No, sorry. God damn it.
Selma's Choice.
There you go. Thank you.
That's right. Yeah.
Tip of my tongue. Thank you.
You're right. Yeah. This further sekualizes Homer in this costume then. But I mean, as a kid, I occasionally liked wearing. Actually, I think I stole this idea for later in school, like 2 or 3 years later, when we were reading Julius Caesar in class, and the teacher was like, "Hey, we'll have a fun toga party in class. Just bring bed sheets and put them on over your clothes, and to celebrate Caesar." And other people had, regular bed sheets, but I wore my Simpsons bed sheets because I thought it'd be funnier that way.
Records from that era were spotty at best.
No, everybody wore togas all the time. That's what Caesar wore.
But not Simpsons togas.
No. But yeah, at the time, Clockwork Orange, I didn't get this reference. And
was it still banned in the UK at this point?
I think so. I think it was like that Kubrick wanted it banned too, or he didn't want it out either. It wasn't like it was done against his will or whatever. The most I know about that is from our pals on Blank Check. Like, they talked about that and how it and Evil Dead 2 became like, very famous to the big nerds the movie nerds in England.
They were video nasties.
That's the name of it. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, here we could watch it. I watched, I forget what eventually made me I'm sure there was a reference on something that made me want to watch maybe it was Talk Soup did an extended Clockwork Orange parody. I think that's what finally made me do it.
It's one of those ones that I have to see, that there have just been so many parodies. I thought, I'll get around to it, which is what I did with King Kong for this episode. Spoilers for things to come. I finally watched King Kong.
And well, eventually, Clockwork Orange will come your way then for podcast purposes. Now you have access to a really good movie theater nearby that I bet eventually will play Clockwork Orange at some point.
Yes, the Rio in Vancouver, great theater.
But so in the script, here's another one. Bart actually, his reaction to Homer in that outfit, he says, "Real horror show," like how Alex in Clockwork Orange talks, instead of "wish we were trick-or-treating." Though Martin being punched for his gay outfit is in the script. That just happens. And I like it for its brutalness. I like that he just is like, "Hey, I'm dressed as a girl," and in a very gay thing, he's like, "No kidding, wham."
He's beaten for expressing himself.
Yes, yeah. There's no extra even wordplay to it. He just gets punched. And Bob, did a parent or teacher put you through this game?
Yeah. It happened at a party, and it happened at like a gym class on Halloween. It was very weird, but obviously, being the too smart kid who didn't want to have any fun, I thought, well, this is just spaghetti.
It tricked me at first, but the thing. I remember doing it once, and it's a trick that only works once on you, because the first time I did it, and the only time I remember, it was at somebody's Halloween party, but it wasn't turn off the lights and we hand it to you. It's here's a hole in a box. Put your hand through it. Ooh, what do you feel? Ew, like
I think we might have been blindfolded.
I like the box. The box thing I think is even better because you can look around and see your surroundings instead of like, oh, I have a blindfold on, then they're definitely tricking me.
And that later showed up in the movie Dune.
You're right. Is that what inspired the writer of Dune to come up with that idea that he got pranked by this similar thing?
The thing that was in the pain box in Dune was just wet spaghetti.
But it feels so crazy when you touch it. And also, though, Homer is such a food monster at this point that he's eating cold spaghetti and uncooked meat.
Yes. I really like Bart just not really being into the game, just the mechanics. Like, hey, well, what's the hold up with the eyeballs?
And also like Homer's, it was an evil game, like good cover, but there's also where they cut a line that like it's clear that Lisa is dressed as the Statue of Liberty, but they have a line where Lisa's holding up her torch. And then Bart is doing like, "Ew, I'm yearning to breathe free. You've got BO," because her arm is up and smelling her armpit. A good little brother joke, but not their smartest.
Yeah, Lisa goes from being dressed as basically a totem pole from indigenous people to the Statue of Liberty. Big step down for Lisa and her beliefs.
That's true. She's sold out to the American bullshit now. You're right. And now I'm sad at this outfit. But Homer is terrified as we enter into the first true story.
Yo, Mom, we haven't got the eyeballs yet. Homer, you're ruining it.
Yeah, well, it was an evil game.
Well, now we need another Halloween activity. Does anyone know a ghost story?
I do. It's the story of a boy and his doll.
That's not so scary.
A doll from hell.
I'm gonna go to the store. Happy birthday, Bart!
Thanks, Grandpa.
Where'd you get all the money?
The government. I didn't earn it. I don't need it. But if they miss one payment, I'll raise hell.
Which, as you said, Bob, Clown Without Pity, written by Gene and Reese. And I think you're right, because they wrote it. I'm assuming that's why it has the most changed lines, that they didn't like it as much.
And a ton of references. Let's get started, folks.
So many.
Sit back and relax as I explain references to you. So, Clown Without Pity. I knew about the song because my grandma listened to oldie stations all the time. But yeah, the 1961 song Town Without Pity, written for the film of the same name. It was sung by Gene Pitney, and it was written by Dmitri Tiomkin with lyrics by Ned Washington. So Tiomkin is a name I recognize, and it makes sense because he was a film composer. He wrote the scores for It's a Wonderful Life, Strangers on a Train, Dial M for Murder, Shadow of a Doubt, and High Noon, and a ton of other things. And of course, he wrote The Ballad of High Noon, which also won an Oscar.
Song.
Yes, yeah. He worked with lyricist Ned Washington, who wrote the lyrics for the High Noon song. Ned Washington also wrote When You Wish Upon a Star, the lyrics for that as well.
Holy cow. Wow, man. So I like this song, Town Without Pity, just fine, but now I want to listen to it again knowing this info about also, I'm a new convert to High Noon, not unlike Bob with Clockwork Orange or King Kong. Like, I hadn't seen High Noon for the longest time. I'd seen all these, and then I watched it for, the private security episode a few months back, and that is like the best movie. And that opening song, I've listened to it a million times now.
It's great. Sung by Tex Ritter, John Ritter's dad, R.I.P. to both of them, actually.
And Bob, actually, you saw the movie Asteroid City and came away from it a little cold. How did you feel about that they had a cover of that, not the original version, but they play the High Noon song in Asteroid City?
Oh, I love all the music in the movie. Don't get me wrong. I think the trailer is the best version of that movie. Every time I see the trailer again, it tricks me into thinking, well, that looks great.
If you see the 3-minute version of it, yeah.
Town Without Pity, though, I recommend give it a listen. It is a hilariously mopey song. I think it's basically two older men making fun of teenagers. Like, oh, all they do is just fucking mope around. They're so annoying. And I feel like Ned Washington is having a little fun with his When You Wish Upon a Star fame, because there's a lyric in Town Without Pity that goes, if we stop to gaze upon a star, people talk about how bad we are.
Dang, wow,
yeah.
Man. Well, you know what? If they are teenagers in the 50s, then they grew up watching Pinocchio, so maybe he's reflecting on, these kids They suck now. I gave them the wrong idea with When You Wish Upon a Star.
And teenagers that was a fairly new concept at this point in time. So, have not seen the movie, but I've heard the song a bunch. And Al Jean was wondering if anyone knew 20 years ago what the song Town Without Pity was.
And this, the plot of this one, it's just a mashup of like 5 other things. Really.
Yeah. I think when I was a kid, I thought, obviously it's Child's Play, but these boomers didn't care about Child's Play. Obviously, and I had to be reminded of this because Child's Play overwrote this in the cultural memory, but the Living Doll episode of The Twilight Zone, that's like 30% of it. And another big chunk of this is based on the 1975 TV movie Trilogy of Terror, which is a horror anthology with 3 segments. The third segment, named Amelia, is the one with the doll basically chasing a woman around her apartment with a knife. And it freaked the hell out of boomers who saw this in their developing years.
It's, I've never bothered to watch it because every time I think about watching it, I then think to myself, like, well, wait a minute. This was a TV movie? Then it can't be scary. I would bet it actually is scary. But also, as Bart says, movies aren't scary from back then as opposed to now.
It's actually kind of hard to watch because it's not a theatrical movie that is as available. And I was reading more about it. I still haven't seen it, but all 3 segments are based on Richard Matheson stories, and he actually adapted the Amelia story for television, the one that's the most famous out of all of these. Karen Black stars in every segment, and in one segment she plays 2 characters, so it's really a Karen Black vehicle.
That Living Doll episode, I had reacquainted myself with it before we did this, when we did Toy Story 4, because that, the Talkie Tina it's specifically the creepy doll that introduces itself. That also, it was based on Chatty Cathy, which also influenced the evil doll who gets away with her crimes in Toy Story 4 that Christina Hendricks plays.
She's the greatest villain of the series. And yes, for the record, the Child's Play guy was inspired by Trilogy of Terror and like 8 other things. This idea of a doll coming to life and killing you and terrorizing you is like just a recurring idea throughout history. No one really owns it.
The one that is directly quoted, though you could think it means Child's Play, it's the Living Doll episode of Twilight Zone. Yeah.
Especially with when Krusty starts saying mean things to Homer. That's definitely from Living Doll. And on the commentary, Matt Groening was saying, at the time, a toy company was going to make the evil Krusty doll, but they chickened out. And I wonder if that had ever been made in the 20 years since the commentary was recorded. There had to be some Comic-Con exclusive, right, Henry?
Actually, I'm here to correct how Matt Groening remembers this.
Okay.
Because, and look, it's hard to keep track of every way Simpsons got merchandised. It then actually did happen, and he forgot it. In 2001, Playmates did make and sell an evil talking Krusty doll with the pointed teeth and everything.
2001. Okay, I have vague memories of seeing it because I worked in a game store and we were selling all the Simpsons stuff then.
So, I didn't know. This time it made me go look it up and see if on eBay, because I sometimes look for Simpsons merch from the episode to see how they merchandised it. But so yes, it's $100 on eBay right now. If you wanted to get one mint in box, I didn't, but it is pretty cool. But one of the reasons I didn't get it though is that it is mostly show accurate. It has the pull string, the teeth are correct. He says lines from this episode. There's even a good and evil switch on the back that make him say different words if you switch him from it, and it's where it should be. But the good is not on top. It's evil on top, good on the bottom, or it's reversed from the episode. It's the opposite of how it is in the episode. And I was like, boo, it has to be 100% accurate.
Yes. Who was asleep at the switch there? I know what goes into making a plush stuffed animal or like dolls or figures because Nina, former guest of the show, future guest of the show, she does design those for Fangamer, and I've seen the process and see how everything goes wrong. And when we're in stores, she will pick up the dolls and look at them to see like, oh, how did they do this? Or like, oh, look, this could be better, like things like that. So I know for a fact that's something that she would not get wrong.
Yeah, it's the difference between like once you mass produce something, like there's really only so much you can do, and the fact that anything gets mass produced with any level of accuracy like those Super 7 Simpsons toys, I'm impressed, and And for 2001, it was crazily good accuracy. I can't compare it to what now accuracy is.
Well, I don't want to go into the entire toy production thing, but there are things go through various stages. At some point, someone should have caught we should make the good and evil things, transpose them because it's not accurate. So at some point, I don't think that was a production manufacturing error. I think that was a design error.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but Nina will step in and let us know. This is a command to my wife who's listening right now.
So they've at least merchandised Evil Krusty a couple times now, but notice that as Conan O'Brien has officially joined the staff, crazy old coot jokes are at a marked increase at this point.
Yes, and John Swartzwelder still on the staff, so jokes about the government giving everyone free money are still prevalent.
I know, it's like, I don't need it, I didn't earn it. Like, wait, if they're saying this is what Social Security is, as you've said before, Bob, I always think of this because the way you put it, it is your money. You pay into Social Security. You're not taking free money from the government. It's you paid it.
Yes, I mean, we know from being self-employed and running a business that actually it's a lot of money you have to pay quarterly to pay for Social Security, and I don't know if we're going to get it back.
No, they keep threatening to do it, but that's also why in this joke, which seems to be mad at old people for doing this, but the reason they get to keep their Social Security because if they miss one payment, I'll raise hell. They actually are scared of pissing off old people. Mm-hmm. Like that's the Biden is one of his better swings at Republicans was saying like, no, they do want to take away Social Security. They say it over and over again, and then Republicans go, technically we didn't say that, and then it's like, no, you did. You do want to take it away.
Well, wait until we're the old people. I want to see what their stance is then.
Though, will you be able to get that Social Security in Canada in 30 years?
Hey, when I'm here in Canada, I still pay American taxes, and that means I'm still entitled to all the benefits. Even if I renounce my citizenship, which I'm thinking about, which is because life is very complicated right now, I get all that money.
It's not entirely politically motivated why you would renounce your citizenship.
Partially, but it's mostly for tax reasons because, Jesus Christ, it's complicated here. I'm not complaining, but America does not want you to live anywhere else. They make it as hard as possible.
Though also Swartzwelder, it does feel very Swartzweldery in that they treat Social Security as just like a money bonanza, not that like there's lots of there's lots of older people who get Social Security and they cannot live off of it. Like you can't live like you need a savings to depend on as well, or you got to get 20 hours a week in Walmart.
Yeah, you got to be a greeter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we'll get to it in season 5, but Grandpa getting a job at Krusty Burger was part of a new advertising campaign, I believe, by McDonald's saying, seniors, come back to work. It's fun and enriching, but really the intent was you need this.
I want to do podcasts when I'm 60, but I don't want to work a cash register.
Yeah.
That's not in my plan.
Too many buttons.
Homer realizes he forgot the gift and just admits to it, and just like, don't worry, son. And he's going to get the toy he really wants. And then on top of all those other things we listed that were references in this episode, then it becomes a Gremlins parody for about a bit.
Yes. I always forget the Gremlins thing. And again, this is one of the scenes built almost entirely out of ADR. Mostly the end. In that instance, it works.
I think it's like one of my favorite jokes in the whole episode. But yeah, in Gremlins entirely is Joe Dante making a tribute to the genre films of his youth, which included going to a place that sells mysteries of the Orient from these mysterious Chinese people. And that's why it's great. I love in the first Gremlins that there's, the respectful Chinese man who's saying like, you Americans, you can't take this stuff. And then his young kid is like, I got to sell this shit. Like, we need money. Like, we live in America. Like, he's been fully taken into being American, which I like.
And yeah, this is the device they used last year, too, with the Monkey's Paw segment, because a similarly shriveled shopkeeper selling cursed objects, voiced by Hank Azaria, really gets the story moving.
Except that man's Moroccan. Yeah.
Oh, right. I think the accent is the same.
Yes, actually, yes. Let's hear from the Frogurt inventor himself.
Do you sell toys?
We sell forbidden objects from places men fear to tread. We also sell frozen yogurt, which I call Frogurt.
Well, I need something for my son's birthday.
Perhaps this will please the gentleman. Take this object, but beware, it carries a terrible curse.
Ooh, that's bad.
But it comes with a free Frogurt.
That's good.
The Frogurt is also cursed.
That's bad.
But you get your choice of topping.
That's good.
The toppings contain potassium benzoate. That's bad.
Can I go now?
Can I go now? Like, that feels like a Conan-style joke. Like, can I go now? Like, I'm tired of this.
He's clearly doing a bit, and Homer can't keep up.
That's so great. That's good. That's bad. So, yes, Bob, we knew all this time that was all ADR and Frankenstein together of replaying the same 6 seconds like 4 times in a row.
And I have to say that I've only heard it called Frogurt within the context of this episode. No one in my universe has ever called frozen yogurt Frogurt. But I have to say that we are in a real Frogurt drought recently. It is no longer the treat of choice. When I first moved to California in the very early 2010s, 2010 to be exact, it was a Frogurt bonanza. It was a Frogurt renaissance. There were, dispense your own Frogurt things on every corner, and they're all gone now. I don't know what happened to it. I live in a real gelato town, though, and I love gelato, so, it's kind of an upgrade.
I'm very pro gelato, yeah. We went to one of those on one of our Los Angeles trips. One of those, like, it's really just about topping dispersal, though, isn't it? Like, the toppings seem like they were the main event, not the Frogurt.
For me, I love a good, strong Frogurt taste.
Though, yeah, I've never heard it. If I were a kid then and we were going to go to TCBY, for instance, I would have said, let's get frozen yogurt. I would just say frozen yogurt. Even hearing The Simpsons use the term Frogurt, it did not enter my lexicon. Though also, I would just ask to go for ice cream, not frozen yogurt anyway. But that's because closer to us, I think, was a Baskin and Robbins more than a TCBY or similar place. What was the original joke here? Well, it was, that heart that they pass by that's beating. Homer asks if he can buy that one, and then he's told that, like, oh, that beating heart, it's cursed and will give you eternal life, but you'll curse it. And then Homer's like, oh, does it cost something? And he's like, yeah, but the doll's free. And then Homer's like, haha, I got the doll for free, and then leaves.
Yeah, I was wondering, because they scan over all of those objects, and they're not really that funny. And it seems like maybe there was a callback to one of them, so I guess there was.
I guess on the shrunken head, 20% rayon, 80% shrunken head, like, that's technically a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, not that memorable. And yeah, potassium benzoate, we were warned about it, but when I tried to look up where it is, I just got sad eventually, because I was like, oh, it's in everything. And yes, it has. Here's what Healthline says. While this compound is approved for use in many countries, it has come under scrutiny for its possible side effects. These range from severe allergic reactions to hyperactivity to an increased risk of cancer.
Oh, wow. So I live in Canada now, and I'm still getting used to everything. And I'll see food items I recognize from America, but I'll bring them home and they'll taste way different. And I think it's because whatever horrible destructive chemical that makes them taste a certain way in America, they can't sell them that way in Canada. So it's like, I used to really like this cherry seltzer because it tasted like candy, but now it doesn't. And I think that's really what it is. It's just like, well, the chemical that makes it taste like candy was giving you pancreatic cancer, and Canada said no to that.
It actually might be potassium benzoate, because one of the top things it said it was in was soda.
Okay.
It's in soda, many snacks, lots of things made out of milk like cheese and stuff, wine, canned and bottled lemonades and teas. It's in a lot of things, which is the joke here. Like, if you're a health nut, or not a health nut, but just pay attention to some things, you're like, boy, potassium benzoate probably shouldn't be in as many things, but apparently it still is.
Well, we've come around to knowing that MSG is good, and it should be in everything. It's great.
Yeah, which is good. They've, Lisa will still have a line in 3 years after this saying, like, oh, no, it's bad, actually. 4 years after this in the season 8 one. Homer gets it, brings it to Bart's party. I love the cartooniness of how Milhouse is smashed. Like, it is a real, like, streak across the screen of Homer's entrance.
And I am old enough to have played Pin the Tail on the Donkey, but I said this in the Roger Rabbit episode. I played it at one party, and yes, the party was in 1988, and yes, the version of the game was Pin the Tail on Roger Rabbit. Where the parents just bought a Roger Rabbit poster, and you would pin the cottontail onto his butt. Basically.
That's great. I mean, you don't need you can just reuse the cottontail all the time. You don't need even the fake tails to take advantage of. I feel like I played it once or twice at a school function, but I was not much of a pin the tail on the donkey type kid. I think I hit more piñatas than I pin tails on donkeys. But also because, if you pin the tail on a donkey correctly, there's not the promise of candy.
No, but it's the pride of successful pinning.
And this is when Bart exclaims, "Great Caesar's ghost," which is famous as the thing Perry White would say, the Superman's boss, the editor-in-chief of the Daily Planet in many Superman TV and movies. I believe it started with The Adventures of Superman. George Reeves, I think, is when it began. Some play on Great Caesar's ghost. It's a Perry White saying. So in all of these other references, Bart then is like, hey, here's a line from Superman, the 50 Superman show. Abe pointing it and saying it's evil. Like, that's one of my favorite. He is like gargantuan. Like, his shape is wrong technically, but I love his scale in that shot. The way he's like, evil.
It's a great contrast to the later shot where he is just alone in a chair, like next to a doorway, and he kind of turns away as everyone is staring at him.
I think SpongeBob ripped off this evil for Mermaid Man. I think they took some inspiration from that.
This is also like, is this Carrie-esque, a family member? This figure saying.
I hadn't considered that, but you're right. It's like her mom saying, like, they're all gonna laugh at you. They're all gonna, like, just warning that something's evil. Yeah, I think you're right. But yeah, so he gets the gift. Also, this is very similar to and that's because it's a huge ripoff of A Million Stories too. But in the Merlin's shop, MST3K, when the kid gets the monkey gift too. Yes. It's actually very similar.
Okay, so wait, is the monkey in that episode or movie, is that the one with the critic?
Yes, yeah, where Ernest Borgnine, like, it actually has a Treehouse of Horror style framing device that Ernest Borgnine wrote these as stories, and he's telling them to a little boy.
Right, but it's about like a really mean critic who reviews local magic stores, and in the end he turns back into a baby for his wife to raise.
Yeah, that's part one, and then part two is the monkey with the symbols. Yes, yeah. That's another of my all-time favorite lines in any Mystery Science Theater, where the horrible man is turned into a baby for his wife to raise, and then they say, like, script written by Sigmund Freud. This is when Krusty pretty much just quotes the talkie Tina line from Living Doll.
I'm Krusty the Clown, and I don't like you. I'm Krusty the Clown, and I'm going to kill you.
Didn't even pull the string that time.
I said I'm going to kill you. You, Homer Simpson.
Oh, yeah? With what?
Homer, what's wrong?
That doll tried to kill me.
I'd say that the pressure's finally gotten to Dad, but what pressure?
Don't leave me alone with him.
You know, as a kid, I did not watch the Child's Play movies because the idea of them freaked me out. That's how effective it was. I think I would just get kind of creeped out if I left a room and like a doll was sitting there, and I would just kind of peek my head back in to make sure it didn't move. So seeing this played in a humorous context was very therapeutic, but it also did creep me out a little bit.
Yeah, no, I never watched the Child's Play movies until I was an adult, and then didn't like them. Though now I know that there's a lot of LGBTQ people are trying to reclaim it or have reclaimed it as a queer series. And of course, the guy who's overseen most of the modern, the last 20 years of the franchise is a gay guy who puts a gay director who puts a lot of intentional queer context into it, which is cool and all. But yeah, the originals I didn't much care for. They scared me, and then I thought they were stupid when they didn't scare me anymore. But I mean, it was one of those, like, this is a thing kids will never feel today, but like the VHS boxes like would terrify me in this horror section. I'd be scared to go in them.
Are kids afraid by just browsing Netflix now? Because I remember walking by the horror section and I couldn't look away from all of the disgusting, nightmarish covers. That the movies in the boxes behind them were much tamer. They just got like just the most exploitative art on the fronts of the boxes.
The art of the VHS box was amazing back then. I mean, you could have a dog shit movie, as seen on Red Letter Media's Best of the Worst, is almost entirely about that. Like, hey, look at this cover. Nothing from this is going to be in this awful movie.
I never saw Ghoulies either, but just seeing the box for Ghoulies, I thought, well, now I have this to worry about. Thanks a lot.
Exactly.
And I think someone's butt is only bitten from underneath in one of those movies once. I think it's just like one gag they do, but they realize just how much that very idea could burrow into the brains of young people, and it really worked.
Same with like Monkey Shines. That's another one that always terrified me just from the box cover. Yeah, I wonder if Netflix tiles of movies or like even the horror section on Freevee, does that, if a kid scans through that like an 8-year-old now, does that give them nightmares too?
I think we're being naive because I'm pretty sure kids can just look up beheadings, actual beheadings on their phone.
Yeah, that's
like, you
true.
boomers were afraid of a painting of a doll?
That's true. They can watch every scary, horrible thing ever. But yeah, so there's several big changes in here, and this one finally answered the question I always wondered, like, what was Homer actually saying woohoo to? So what it was in the May table draft, it is Homer sees a horrible car crash watching the Daytona 500, and it's like woohoo, like he wants to see a crazy. It's one of those jokes.
This thing about Springfield's air only being dangerous to children and the elderly is something I think about a lot as, large sections of America just start burning for no reason. Well, the reason is climate change, but it's something that no one can fix at this point. So I always think of, when the air is slightly more breathable, it means I can go outside.
Yes. Or we just laugh at like things getting underwater in coastal places. We're like, well, it's not underwater for us yet. It's pretty woohoo. Yeah. Also, I think the animators do a great job with Killer Krusty Doll animation is some of the best in the episode.
Yeah, I will say, so we're recording this after we recorded Itchy and Scratchy the movie, which comes next. And I really wish Rough Draft Korea got to do this one. I mean, this one looks really good, but goddamn, I feel like they should have been given all the Halloween episodes.
Could you imagine what they would have done with Homer, King Homer? Oh boy, man. But yeah, so Homer freaking out and nobody believing him. This also feels like a Gene and Reese thing where they're like, yeah, the plot is at first nobody believes Homer, and then immediately, almost instantly, they go like, forget it. Marge just sees it happen. They don't care about the nobody believes Homer thing after more than a minute. And also, here's another one. I'm sure, Bob, you figured, as I always did, that the Homer was not originally singing the Oscar Mayer Wiener song.
No, and in fact, I was wondering, when is Bart going to come in and hit him with a chair? That's a different episode. Yeah, but lots of ADR. Is he singing a different song?
He's singing a different song in the script, and this might have been a change for copyright reasons, but it's a parody of Flipper. He's saying, Homer, king of the sea. No, like, that's what he's singing.
And this Patty line is also mega ADR, correct? Do you have the original one for that?
I do, yeah. So originally, her line is, we won't be staying for dinner, which that makes sense with the food that's in front of her, and it makes her, but I do think it's funnier that she's like, I'm officially gay now. If I ever wasn't gay, I'm gay now.
I mean, Halloween episodes aren't canon, but I think this does seal the deal. For Patty.
Having to see a wet, naked Homer running by her, I mean, the background, the wild background of Homer running through, that's another great moment. I love that shot. But yeah, it's, and Homer's singing a song about being a dolphin. It makes more sense that Krusty pops out with a harpoon to hit Homer.
Yeah, it's related because it just, the gag is just that, Krusty's going to harpoon him in a bathtub. But if Homer is singing about how he's a sea mammal, it makes, there's more of a connection there. It did seem kind of random, I guess, with the rewrite. Yeah.
If I ever thought about it before, I was just thinking, well, Homer's like a fat whale and he's harpooning him like a whale because Homer's fat. But now I think it's definitely a reference to the Flipper song that's not there. They would call back to that one over and over again when they'd be like coy on the old commentaries of like, is Patty gay? Well, we did ever say this line, but it's just 2 years after this DVD was released, they do the official Patty is gay episode, which not looking forward to covering that one.
Well, of course, in this episode they're following the science in that everyone begins straight and eventually things undo that, right, and you become gay.
Of course, it's some level. It's a response to trauma, and in Patty's case, it's seeing Homer's nude body. Mm-hmm. Also cut just fully is basically a 5 to 10 second scene of Krusty attacking Homer at work. Like Homer is sitting in his chair at the plant, and Krusty's smacking his head into the console, and Homer just says, "Hey, what'd you do with my lunch?" I wonder if that got animated and cut, or it was cut from. I'm thinking it probably went to at least animatic. I would bet, and then it gets to the dirty socks moment, which I hope in the next Barbie film, Krusty is in there trying to date Barbie. But doesn't this feel like a very boys joke that like when you're a boy and you get access to a Barbie, you're like, ooh, now Barbie's kissing this toy, and now, oh, he's going to take her sweater off.
Well, you immediately take off the clothes if you're a boy. You're like, well, okay, time to answer some questions that will only lead to further questions.
The two genders are undressing Barbie or dressing up Barbie. Which do you do? That defines your gender. No. But Homer's dirty socks are more powerful than whatever curse is on this crazy Krusty doll as well. It actually does overpower him and knock him out. Here comes another change joke, too.
Thank you. So it's so funny when we covered Bart the Murderer that we just remembered that, Fat Tony does not come back until season 6. He comes back with Homie the Clown, which is a huge gap in time from when he's introduced. So it's so weird to see a gangster joke or a mobster joke, and it's not Fat Tony. It's just some guy they invented.
Especially when Al Jean, I think, is Fat Tony's #1 fan. He makes sure there's at least one Fat Tony episode per season. And in this case, in 34, Gene wrote the episode. He is the writer of that episode.
This guy with the box of nude photos of Whoopi Goldberg, he seems designed to be replaced with ADR because his mouth is covered up the entire time with the boxes. It's a really mean and stupid joke. It's very cruel, and
it's so mean to Whoopi Goldberg, who is not unattractive.
And the way basically the film reverses and the box comes back into his hand, it looks. I mean, I think they realize like this looks so cheap, it's funny, so we'll just leave it in because this is our gag we're inventing with video effects. But boy, not a fan of this. It doesn't look like a box of pictures. Because it was clearly not that. Sorry, I know you have the original line there, Henry.
Yeah. I mean, but to just deconstruct it, like, I think it's so mean that it's like not only is Whoopi Goldberg too, no one wants naked pictures of her that even the bottomless pit spits it out like that. That is a very Gene and Reese style joke too. Like you could almost see them writing Johnny Carson saying the line, the bottomless pit even spit it out kind of delivery.
And then you do a golf swing.
So the original joke was an intentionally boring joke, and I kind of wish they kept it so it all happens in sequence. But what the guy says is, quote, "These old newspapers and tin cans won't be bothering me anymore." And then he just throws them in the hole.
I like how it's a boring. It goes from a cursed clown to a dead body to just garbage.
Yeah, it's a guy throwing out garbage, and it does not spit it back out. It's just, he goes, I'm done with it. Like, it almost feels intentionally like a reverse of what the joke should be. They've instead decided, let's have a mean joke about Whoopi Goldberg instead. And according to the very reliable source of Mr. Skin, Whoopi Goldberg has yet to do a nude scene in her career. So
there's still time.
Though, on the Mr. Skin page, they're much nicer than this joke. They say, like, well, she hasn't done it yet, but if she does, we're going to have our eyes peeled and we'll congratulate her.
Will Guinan bear it all?
In the script, this isn't a change, but we knew it anyway just from watching it. But in the script, they say, just like in Cape Fear, Krusty's under the car.
This early, they're recognizing how amazing that movie is. They're a year out from the release of it, but that was just enough time to remember it and reference it.
I saw John Vitti, he said this about the Cape Fear with an E episode of Simpsons. Vitti says it was a big Sam Simon thing. Like, he was obsessed with that movie. It was a real drive from him. Almost, I feel like they're making fun of it. Like they thought it wasn't good.
I think they just thought it was a giant hilarious cartoon, and I watched it again for the first time in a very long time in a theater. It's amazing. I got to watch it again before we do Cape Fear many moons from now.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in 20 years. I think it's been a good while.
I mean, there's all kinds of cartoonish violence, and he's hilarious. But honestly, the highlight of the movie is a very long, uncomfortable scene with him and Juliette Lewis, and she is just 18 years old and just like on the same level with De Niro. We'll talk all about it, but man, what a great movie.
Oh man, when he takes her retainer out and starts touching her teeth, like so it's so good and creepy. But I think at the time people were looking down on it like, Scorsese's doing a remake, this is beneath him, like he should be doing better.
It's basically him doing schlock, which is better than almost any other movie out that year.
Yes, yeah. Casino's not right after that. I think Kundune's after Casino, but definitely after Goodfellas gets to be such a big hit, that's when people tell him, like, well, just make Goodfellas 2 and call it Casino.
Goodfellas 2, the casino years.
I think this is really good animation, but now you're just making me think, boy, Rough Draft would have made this even better. The way Homer tumbles through the hallway with Krusty on his back, like, is so good. Though also the toaster's been laughing at me. That's not in the script. It's just Homer screaming. That was a late addition too. Though I do love, "Ew, dog water." That's a great line.
As he's being drowned, he's objecting to that element.
Marge gives a call and gets some their favorite running gag at the time of ironic hold music, and it's the song "Everybody Loves a Clown" by Gary Lewis and the Playboys.
I think out of all of the hold music jokes, this is the one song that seems just like way too obscure, though it is perfect. Yeah, we were talking about it before the recording, Henry. We both found this out. Gary Lewis is the son of Jerry Lewis.
He was a very lucky boy, because like Jerry Lewis was, I mean, this song came out like within the same decade as the Nutty Professor. Like it wasn't like, Jerry Lewis's son when Jerry Lewis is an old man, because this is back when celebrities had kids in their like 20s instead of in their like 70s like they do now.
Yeah, I guess he's still kicking at 77, Gary Lewis.
I was reminded of Gary Lewis's existence because when we did the Sideshow Bob Black Widower, the Jerry Lewis Dean Martin reconnection thing, Gary Lewis was one of the main sources in that too. He was telling the story of it from his childlike perspective, which was, as our pal Thad reminded us, like, no, that's all bullshit. They did that for the camera. They hung out many times before, after that, and after that.
It was just the most visible one, and you really couldn't look up the other appearances.
But Gary Lewis got a payday for this, and I guess still does from the Disney Corporation.
Although it sounds like they wheeled in Kip Lennon to do the singing on this, because it's not the actual recording.
Oh, I bet you it is Kip. Yeah. And then that's when they fade to the next scene of the repairman coming in. Homer with Krusty pulling his tongue out. Another of my like all-time favorite shots. I just love how wacky and big Homer's mouth and tongue is. Like, it's too cartoony. I wonder how Groening felt. But a really wonderful resolution to the episode.
Yep, here's your problem. Someone set this thing to evil.
I love you, Homer.
Come here, you.
Here you go, buddy.
Did you walk the dog?
Yeah, he buried me a couple of times.
Yeah, dogs like to bury old junk.
Yeah, you stupid idiot. Oh, what a day. Homer made me give him a sponge bath. Ugh. But coming home to you makes it all worthwhile. Mwah! Oh. Here, let me get that for you.
What a sweet ending there.
And I guess according to them, the segment was going to end with Homer just being mean to Krusty. There was no coda with him coming home to Malibu Stacy.
It's great that then once they become friends, Homer instead like, no, you work for me now. You're my employee, pretty much, who's just comes home from a long day of work. So that ending though is in the final table draft. So maybe they changed that after the first table read or the first draft.
This recurring Love American Style Heart Iris Out thing that ends every segment is one of the weirdest references. I guess you had to be there because this was never really shown to us, and I only figured this reference out like through backwards interpretation because I would see later things reference it more obviously, saying it was Love American Style, like Mystery Science Theater did a bunch of like Love American Style sketches with the heart iris out on them.
Right, yeah.
And the most important thing to realize about this is it was an anthology show, and it's what Happy Days spun off from. There was a segment in this anthology show that they spun off into Happy Days, but there's one other series that was spun off from Love American Style, and that is Wait Till Your Father Gets Home.
What?
Henry gave a wild reaction. Yes. One of the segments on Love American Style was the pilot for Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, the 2-season Hanna-Barbera cartoon from the 70s that was kind of like All in the Family, but not really. And it looks a lot like Family Guy.
Wow. I did not know that. I only knew Wait Till Your Father Gets Home from the Cartoon Network reruns of my youth, but I did not know the context. Wow, that's so funny. It's that and Happy Days. Also, I forgot it was 2 seasons. I thought it was like, I feel like every Hanna-Barbera thing back then was 1 season, and then Hanna-Barbera just sells their next crap.
It was 40-some episodes of this show. And I have to tell you folks out there that I don't know where you can stream Love American Style. You probably don't want to watch it. I know I don't. But some wonderful psycho has uploaded every episode to YouTube in stunning quality. Somebody out there is doing this for every show that doesn't matter, and it's great.
If you want to learn more of the Happy Days side of that, I did deep dive into that for our Laverne and Shirley in the Army cartoon we did. And yeah, it's just so funny that they're like, oh, Happy Days. I mean, it's like somebody told Gary Marshall, hey, you see American Graffiti? Hire most of those people and put them in make a thing with that.
Done and done.
The dog likes to bury old junk. I love that line. The original line is Homer sends Krusty back. You may see Krusty brings him a beer on that tray, and it's not drawn like a regular Duff beer. That's because it's a light Duff. And then Homer says like, oh, that's a light beer. Can you go back and give me another one? And Krusty's like, yeah, okay. And he just leaves. Like,
okay. You've solved the mystery for why that beer looks weird.
There you go. Yeah, it's all in the script. I think the Hard Iris Out though is listed in that script though too. And also though, Krusty apparently is making love to this doll so much that the head is falling off. I guess is what's happening here.
He's really working the mouth, is what we're saying.
Ooh, oh boy! All right, hey, why don't we move on to the start of our next story here?
So then his wife comes through the door.
So?
Did I mention she was dead?
No.
Well, she was, and she hit him in the head with a golf club.
And?
Don't you remember? He went golfing all the time, and it really bugged her.
You said he went bowling.
No, Homer! I've coughed up scarier stuff than that.
Grandpa, why don't you tell us a story? You've led an interesting life.
That's a lie, and you know it. But I have seen a lot of movies.
I love the lot of movies. They have to show you that Homer's bad at telling stories and can't establish things. That's why Homer doesn't get to tell a story in this one. He's actually bad at that.
Yeah, I think it's the last framing device where it's everyone telling a story. Or like some characters are telling a story. Although, I don't know why Lisa would tell the Krusty doll story. It doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it doesn't really fit for her why she would tell a story that doesn't involve her in any way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
I didn't have a lot of lines in my story. But yeah, so I did watch King Kong for the first time in my life. And I just feel like I didn't need to see it, but I'm glad I did because I don't need to tell you people this, but it's a good movie, and it is. It really helps to have a context for what movies of this period look like because it doesn't look like any of them. It's so sophisticated, even though of course, obviously, the puppet's very jittery. There's like the effects don't really work the way they should, but it was one of the biggest magic tricks of its era, and it's worth respecting just for that alone.
Remind yourself that it is now a 90-year-old film, and that they were able to do this stuff that is still incredible to look at today, and a lot of times, and you're just thinking like, well, how do they do that? Like, that inspired a generation of special effects people, like who by the 50s and 60s they became adults and were doing the stop motion stuff even better. And one thing that kind of shocked me about the movie is because I don't watch pre-code movies a lot because there's not a lot of really famous big pre-code movies. By that I mean the Hays Code that said you can't show certain things. Criminals can never win. You can't show race mixing in your movies, things like that. So when you sit down to watch this, you do not expect to see so many people die on the screen in hilarious ways. Like you will see someone fall off a cliff in a Hitchcock movie, but you won't see the body hit the ground, and you see that about 14 times in King Kong. It's so many. Yeah, I mean, obviously you laugh, or I laugh because I was like, well, that's an obvious dummy. So you do laugh, but I mean, I did not want to watch it. I rewatched it too yesterday. I hadn't seen it. I watched it as a kid, but hadn't seen it in full in a long time. You don't want to act above it to be like, oh, look how crappy that looks. But there were a couple times where like a dummy. Actually, it's when somebody survives when Fay Ray and the boring guy fall off the vine and fall like literally like 100 feet into water, and at the edge of the water too is where their dummies fall, and then they pop out, and I was like, oh sure, they're fine. I
appreciate a good dummy. But yeah, so when I was a kid seeing this King Homer segment, I thought it was particularly violent about the amount of people he eats. Well, he chomps on a ton of people in the movie too, and you don't expect that level of violence in a black and white movie from that era. So it it's kind of shocking. You're like, wow, they went there. I mean, obviously we've seen so much more violence since then, but it's just odd to see it in that context with that acting style being filmed this certain way. You just don't think it's possible, but it is. I mean, you see Fay Wray's nipples in this movie. That surprised me. In fact, during the scene, my wife and I both laughed like Beavis and Butthead, because during the scene in which the movie maker guy, Denham, director if you will, puts her in this like diaphanous see-through gown and gets her to pose while he films her, and he basically says, "You stop posing, I'm going to get behind this camera and start cranking." And we laughed about how he's telling this woman dressed very seductively to pose, and that he's going to get behind cover and start cranking.
He's cranking away.
Yeah.
I did laugh at him saying crank, because he says cranking a couple times. Like there were many times. I'm glad I watched it too, because there were many times that I was like, oh, well, not just this shot, but even the talk about women not being wanted. Like that is the first like 5 minutes of the movie. Like, think I want a dame in this picture, but no, they say I got to have romance to sell it. Well, I'll give him romance.
And the Smithers guy in King Kong, he is the love interest. He's not the gay guy who gets eaten by King Kong.
That's why I never think about that guy, because I just think about like, oh, he gets eaten. Like I don't, as very well described in the scene in Inglourious Bastards where they're playing the game at the Nazi undercover bar. You know, there are easy comparisons to make to the story of King Kong as some sort of, I don't think fully intentional by the director or writer, but as some sort of allegory on African Americans in the world. And I mean, it's not good, but they just watch the Inglourious Bastards.
I think you can read it a number of ways, because clearly the movie's not like, oh, colonialism really worked out for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
this did no damage to us and where we live. I was reading Will Sloan. He has a really good review on Letterboxd, and he's saying that like I don't think they had this intent, but it does reflect values of the time. And this movie, honestly, King Kong is not trying to say anything really. It's just like, what if there was a big monster and we grabbed it, and there was lots of cool stop motion, and then it went loose in New York? Because I would say like conservatively, 65% of the movie is basically a silent movie with like just incidental dialogue, just action scenes. I feel like it was just spectacle, and the idea of like trying to say something with the movie was not really on the table, except 'twas beauty killed the beast. But people forget that quote starts with, "It wasn't airplanes." You have to remember to say that first.
Also, I've seen it quoted as "twas," but he really does say it
was. Yeah.
By the way, I know Tarantino was hardly the first guy to say, "Hey, this story of King Kong being dragged away from his home and put in chains and displayed for Americans, there's an easy connection to history you can make there." But I'm with you, Bob, that I think this is, in part because it's 90 years old, it is of course full of racist stuff by today's eyes, but I do wonder, in contemporary standards, it was not seen as racist for its time. Like how, say, for its time, 15 years before this movie came out, Birth of a Nation was viewed by people then as, or some people then, this is a racist movie. Like, that's what people called it then.
Yeah, I mean, it surprised me because I will say this is the most black people you'll see in a movie from this era, and maybe even 30 or 40 years later. And to be fair, they're not playing roles they would want, they would prefer, but it's not people in blackface doing this. They actually hired black actors, a lot of them, to be in these scenes. Baby steps, I guess, but you will never see a black person in a movie in this era unless they're helping someone with their luggage.
Yeah, and but yeah, like you said too, King Kong murders so many people. I did think that for the longest time, I thought King Homer killing so many people in this was supposed to be their way of like, oh, this Homer kills, this King Kong kills people all the time. Because in the remakes, I feel like they try to soften King Kong and make it like, no, he's not a bad guy. Because if King Kong, say in the Peter Jackson one, directly murdered as many people as he does in the first one, you would not think he's a great guy or someone to be pitied.
Yeah, nobody feels conflicted about King Kong in this movie. They're like, no, he's gross, kill him. And he just kills people indiscriminately. There's one scene towards the end where he's just climbing a building. He sees a woman asleep in bed. He just pulls her out. She obviously is freaking out. I mean, how do you react to that? If you don't know giant monkeys exist, but then one wakes you up by pulling you out of your high-rise apartment, and then it's like, you're not the woman I want, throws you away. You're just dead. I'm like, somebody kill this bum. Get him out of here.
Yeah. Oh, he smashes up that train for so long, and he's like, no, you're killing all the people on this train. I mean, all future giant monster movies are a reaction to this one, and fans who felt bad for King Kong, then they make their own King Kong or King Kong likes. They put in more pity for the character or more empathy, or they make him more lovable. All these things to lighten up King Kong. I mean, definitely in the Peter Jackson one, which is twice as long and half as good, he works very hard to make you feel for King Kong, and the Ann Darrow character in that loves King Kong. She hangs out with him and thinks he's great. They're friends.
I'm going to steal from my Letterboxd review, and my thoughts on this movie are it should not be called King Kong. It should be called At Least 8 Dinosaurs, because these guys get to this island and they just seem to be inconvenienced by the dinosaurs. Like, get all these dinosaurs out of here. I'm after that monkey. Like, they don't care that dinosaurs are real and all around them. They just care about this monkey. Is there something about this world we don't know? Are these guys seeing dinosaurs all the time?
I love, yes. I had to laugh of when I forgot the first thing they see. Like, here's a stegosaurus that you've never seen alive. They don't exist. And they're like, kill it. Oh, it's moving some still. Shoot it in the eye. Nope, one more time. Yeah, it's dead.
I felt bad for that thing. So yeah, I do think, I mean, they are trying to say things about like this is like the white man intruding in these places, and is this right? Because it's like what they're doing is kind of ugly, but I don't know if the audience of the times would see it that way. But it's just a big Rorschach test for like society and race, and when all the filmmakers wanted to do was make a giant monkey movie, not understanding the implications of certain imagery, really.
If I was on that island, well, maybe he was easier to capture, but I would think if I'm making a show, look, a gorilla that's bigger by 10 times than every other gorilla, pretty impressive, I agree. But there's other gorillas exist. What doesn't exist is a T-Rex or a pterodactyl. Like, those are the things.
More impressive. I had to laugh, though, because there is basically just a 40 or 45-minute chunk of this movie that's pure action, no real dialogue, all stop motion. Then they capture King Kong with these gas bombs that this episode references. I swear to God, so much of the movie is Chekhov's gas bomb. It's like, good thing I got these gas bombs. Hey, watch out, there's gas bombs in there. Don't get them wet. Oh, did you bring the gas bombs? I swear there's like 9 mentions of gas bombs, and the way King Kong is taken out, just like one gas bomb knocks him out, and then after all that action, they cut to the theater he's in. There's no discussion of how he gets there, which is great. I like that. And it's a bunch of like Muppet Show quips as people are sitting down in the theater, like, a big gorilla, we got enough of those in New York City.
Yeah, I love that. And they don't seem impressed enough when they see him either.
Yeah.
They're like,
Oh, and we do get a woman sincerely saying, well, I never, in the audience.
Yes, that's true. Characters from Marx Brothers appear in this too. Like, it really is a fun movie to see. I liked it a lot. I would say of all the modern ones, I do have a love of King Kong, probably mostly because I dreamed of going to Universal Studios Florida, which when it opened when I was around this age, King Kong was a huge part of it. They're giant, no pun intended, but that you would see a life-size King Kong animatronic fucking up New York City.
Yeah, when I see the close-ups of King Kong, which are not stop motion, they're just a big face, I'm thinking, did they go to Universal for this?
I know. I love, and yeah, sadly, Bob, you never got to experience that King Kong, and it's gone now.
He burned alive.
That was the Hollywood one. The Florida one, they just tore it down and replaced it with the Mummy ride, so it just doesn't exist anymore. But it was a really fun ride with a great person telling you, like, well, I think we'll be safe from King Kong. Wait, what's that? I think we survived it, everyone. Those guys worked hard. Well, actually, we had a woman doing it, but yeah, the people who did it worked hard.
This commentary is an interesting point in history in which the Peter Jackson movie was announced, but not out yet. And I have not seen it. I know you have, Henry, but I listened to the We Hate Movies recent live episode about it. It sounds excruciating. I will only give 3 hours of my life to a movie if it earns it, and it seems like this one does not.
No, it's I haven't seen it since seeing it in theaters. I was gonna see it because I really did love the Lord of the Rings movies, and I thought, like, boy, what can he do with this? Yeah, the problem was after he made Lord of the Rings, he's like, I can make a 3-hour movie every time, or 3 hours is my starting point. He had dreamed of making a King Kong movie for forever. It was his blank check to make a King Kong movie. It is full of Kong lore and love. He loves King Kong so much, but it makes them luxuriate forever. And here's a great example of it. In the original King Kong, the T-Rex fight is so memorable. I loved it so much as a kid. It scared me. Him snapping the jaw, like, it was terrifying to me. But it only lasts so long. In the movie, to surprise you, I guess, Peter Jackson's like, people think he's going to just fight one T-Rex. I'm going to have him fight 3 T-Rexes, and it is so much longer, and more T-Rexes show up, and eventually I was like, and that was the scene I was waiting the whole movie to see, because I was like, boy, how's he going to do the T-Rex fight? And it is 3 times as long and boring. It gets boring at a certain point when he's like punching his 3rd T-Rex. I came to dislike it. And also when I saw that movie, this is how long it was. They capture King Kong at seriously 2 hours into that movie. And when he's captured and they're like, well, we're going to put him on Broadway, and it fades out, multiple people in the theater, and this was like the first week of the movie, stood up and left. They're like, I'm accepting. This is the end of the movie for me. I'm out of here. I'm done with this. Yeah, I don't know if I could watch it again now, like actually like watch it in real time.
I will instead play the Xbox 360 launch game.
You'll get 800 achievements easy from that. That's why I played it.
Nice. Yeah. Those will finally give me the respect I deserve.
But Kogan and Wolodarski, yeah, they wrote this one. They tell the funny story of Sam Simon. They went to Sam Simon's house to watch it together, and then Matt Groening's like, I wasn't invited to that. That's one of the few references on the commentary to Groening and Sam Simon not liking each other. Now, especially because he's dead, I do wish they'd have just done one with Sam Simon. Like, Groening is like, okay, Matt, you don't have to be here. But Sam Simon should get to tell something on a commentary.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that he was just so done with it when he left, because there are so many stories that I would like him to tell. Like, I forget even what he sounds like outside of a few podcasts I heard him on. So we forget how essential he is, even though his name is in every episode up front.
Yeah. At least for the first 4 seasons.
Yeah.
And I feel like he would have better recollection of some things than Groening would. Groening is great, but I would love to hear Sam Simon say, no, I remember when we pitched this, instead of hearing people say, I think Sam pitched that one. I think Simon would have had a better memory of it. But also, he, I think, was pretty much done with Simpsons emotionally then, and I think a commentary was the last thing he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. They do mention that they could not have him, that Matt Groening did not get the invite to the Sam Simon King Kong party. I also think Carlos Baez and his team did their best work in this segment. Clearly, they had the videotape on their desk and were pausing over and over again. That's why I was so glad to watch the movie again, because I kept going like, oh, that shot is exactly in this Simpsons episode. They just drew it.
Instead of the other way around, I was seeing King Homer in King Kong. I was seeing shots and compositions and acting.
This lives and dies on the animation, and the animators made this work. This time, Marge is just hired as if she was from a personals ad instead of being found as a classic apple-stealing vagabond.
She was pulling in Aladdin, yeah. The director basically stops her from being punished for stealing and kind of like carries her away like she's an object.
Hey, and then when she thinks he's hitting on her, he's like, hey, don't get me wrong. I want this strictly professional. Like, that guy, his accent is hard not to just do for fun, because he's like, it's a great picture. Guys, we're all going to be millionaires, and I'm going to take you with me. That's right, buddy.
Yeah, everybody talks like that in this movie except for the women. So it's like, I got the angle, Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, no, she's more like, oh, I've never been on a boat before. Wow. Speaking of women in boats, let's hear one of the famous lines from this episode.
My name is Marge Bouvier. I'm here about Duran. Single white female wanted for mysterious expedition. Must like monkeys. Non-smoker preferred.
Well, you'd be a welcome change of pace from the rest of these crude and uncouth sailors.
Arr, 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 arr.
What do you think, Smithers?
I think women and seamen don't mix.
We know what you think. Young lady, you're hired.
Burns is much more devilish than the director in King Kong.
Yeah, he had, he was compromised morally. I guess he tried to do the right thing more often than Burns does in this.
The director in it is more just like a dreamer who then when people like die for his dreams, he's like, well, that's too bad. Anyway, but he's not trying to kill people like Burns is.
So yeah, one thing, you heard the clip of Tank Azaria doing a pirate voice, a sailor voice, but Captain McAllister, or the Sea Captain, won't be invented until 2 production episodes from now. So we just had a non-Fat Tony mobster, and we have a non-Captain McAllister Sea Captain guy going, "Yar!"
The beginning of their love of saying "yar, yar," though this was not in the script either. This originally, it's when he says crude and uncouth sailors, it's them arguing about cubism as an art form. So I prefer them just saying "ar, ar" back and forth.
Yes, I love their "yar" off they're having here. And yeah, the Smithers line, I mean, probably the most explicit reference to him being gay at this point.
And it seems like Burns knows he's gay. He's like, we know what you think. But
it's just like the guy in the movie. Really, at first, you think he's going to say the Smithers line, but it's more like, women have no place on a ship with a bunch of men.
Yeah, when she's talking to him on the boat later, he's just like, he keeps saying it to her, like, I wish you weren't on this boat. And then later the guy says he's accusing her of getting soft. The director's accusing him of getting soft on a dame. He's like, nah, I'm never going for that stuff. And like that again, back in the 30s, guys would just say like, I'm a bachelor forever, and no one would accuse them of being gay. But now when he says these lines, it entirely reads as like, I am only attracted to men. I fuck other sailors on this boat all the time. I'm not into women.
The fact that he was the love interest did surprise me with my 2023 eyes.
Though they make sure, you're right, it is pre-Hays Code, but they do make sure to say like they're getting married tomorrow, just in case you think they've been, unwed for too long after hugging one another. Or no, he does kiss her on the boat. That's true. No, the women in semen, I mean, the line semen obviously didn't make sense to me as a kid. Flew over my head.
I think it was a later teenage viewing where I heard the joke and went, oh.
Bob, actually talking about movies you may or may not have seen. Have you seen 28 Days Later?
No, and I want to watch it, but isn't it in a weird limbo right now where it's very hard to watch?
When our blank check pals talked about it, they said they had to, one of them bought an old DVD and another found a file somewhere. And also, because the movie was filmed digital, it's like a 480p movie. There's no HD version of it, apparently. But I think like the soundtrack is like in a weird space. So yes, it's hard to watch legally right now unless you just buy an old DVD.
I think I might have watched the back half of it on Sci-Fi Channel or something in the late aughts. But I really want to watch the whole thing after hearing the blank check episode about it.
I loved it. I mean, also, like, fast zombies, I'm sick of them. I get it. Like, and it invented fast zombies, so I see how you can be sick of it. But not to spoil the movie for folks who haven't seen it, but at the halfway point of the film, which is, it is a UK-based zombie movie, halfway through the film, the two characters are locked up. And while they're locked up, one of them starts reminiscing about The Simpsons. And I have the moment right here. In the zombie apocalypse, as we would all do in times of strife, we remember episodes of The Simpsons to get us through it. And here's the line.
Marge on this ship. Smithers says, women and seamen don't mix. And Mr. Burns says, we all know what you think, Smithers. And that was my favourite ever joke in The Simpsons. You see, that's what they're doing a few hundred miles from here across the channel, across the Atlantic. They're eating dinner and they're watching the fucking Simpsons.
Was that a theater cam rip, Henry?
That, I swear, that was me turning it up as loud as I could.
Okay.
The guy is echoey and off screen for it.
Got it. Yeah. Al Jean references it on the commentary, which was it must have just happened.
Yeah, though Al Jean clearly didn't see the movie because he's calling it a vampire movie.
Yeah, he called it 28 Days, a movie about vampires from the future.
Yes. Maybe he got it confused with 30 Days of
Night
or something.
Oh, yeah.
Which is that's an all right vampire movie. It's a good vampire comic turned into an all right vampire movie. Funny, I remember in the theaters back then hearing a Simpsons reference was not so special, or was special. Now not so special.
Well, we made a job out of reminiscing about The Simpsons, especially during times of strife.
But it's so funny hearing this guy go like, and that was my favorite joke on The Simpsons, and that's what they're doing over there. They're fucking watching The Simpsons.
That's what every other Simpsons podcast sounds like, people.
Yeah.
You're lucky you found us.
And yeah, like you said, Bob, even the shot of the three guys on the ladder watching Marge sunbathing, that's just from the movie too.
It's real Three Stooges staging because they look very uncomfortable to just be that close to another man on a ladder on a smokestack. It's like we all got to say our jokes in order.
And yeah, the apes, but they're not so big. That bit was a late addition, though the spirit of the joke is the same. Basically, it's them saying, I thought we're going to Monster Island. No, we're going to Zombie Island. No, we're going to Skull Island. Oh, Skull Island, that's scary. The ADR is better.
Yeah, I prefer the ADR joke. So, there are some good changes with these video edits.
I forget that Otto is the skipper from the movie, and he even has the pipe in his hand that he's smoking when they arrive at it. And it's framed exactly like the introduction of the island. And he's like, look, there's the wall, just like I said. Otto's the skipper, and originally the line, instead of the Ape Island JCs, which is about the Junior Chamber of Commerce, which that's people who, would make up tourist things for a city back in then.
It's sort of like, I think it's like the Knights of Columbus or like the Rotary Club. You'll see these signs on like welcome to town name, and you'll see like little shields for different civic societies that are there. That's back when people needed those instead of just going on Facebook and talking about vaccines.
But the original joke, which is good, but I think I like that one better, made up by the Ape Island JCs. The original joke was, so why is it called Skull Island? Well, it was found in 1792 by Admiral Skull. It's an okay joke.
It's more of a dad joke.
I do love the bathing beauty. And so they head to the island just like in the movie. They part the grass and look at the dancers.
I think they're actually underplaying what is not really a joke in the movie, but they get to the island in the movie and they see all the natives having a ceremony and they're still hidden, and the director is like, okay, everybody stay hidden. I'm going to get a shot of this. And he pulls the biggest camera in your life you've ever seen out into the middle of a clearing, starts setting it up, and that's when he's spotted. So Marge's hair poking through the grass, that's like way more subtle than a man setting up a huge camera in the middle of a clearing that everyone can just see him.
That's very true. You're right. Yeah, that actually is played funnier than it's done in the episode. They are called out with Mosi Tatupu, which, again, we're dorks. We don't know we're not sports people. We have to look these things up. I'm sure my parents laughed because they knew who Mosi Tatupu, the NFL football player, was.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was a reference until now.
Yeah, he was a Hawaiian football player, mainly played for the Patriots in the 70s and into the 80s. He had retired the year before this aired, and if you look up pictures of him, he doesn't not look like the chieftain who says Mosi Tatupu, but it's a reference to that football player. So, and his name is Mosi space Tatupu. And also to cut out time, they don't do the whole thing of go back to the boat, have her be kidnapped, go back to the island. They're just like, she just gets kidnapped and tied up.
That would have made the movie a lot better, I think.
If they just cut to that and got straight to it.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, it's not a long movie, but it could cut out like 10 minutes because you're still waiting to get to all the Kong and the stop motion stuff. It's a pretty long drive to that special effects stuff.
I really like that they even, when in the movie, when she's tied up, they even think about like, oh yeah, the things that tie her up to it has to be undone by Kong. So Kong like is able with his finger to like turn it backwards and loosen her wrist. I was like, oh, that's a really neat little trick. I hadn't even thought of that. In my memory, thanks to this episode, I thought Kong fights the T-Rex before he gets her because that's how it is in the episode. But the T-Rex fight is after he gets her. But yeah, Homer fights the T-Rex and gets bit and shouts out Doe. Again, the crushing, it's not just like him snapping his jaw and crunching it in. It's also the like animalistic way he's like, are you alive? You alive? Like he wiggles the corpse of the dead T-Rex. It for real scared me as a kid.
I feel worst of all, I feel nothing for Kong. I'm feeling bad for these dinosaurs. They're just doing their job.
Well, isn't that because they're not unlike birds? You're on the bird-like side.
I think so. Yes, I am on the bird-like side, and they're more charming. I hate King Kong. I hate like the idea of a giant monkey is gross. I hate Bigfoot. So I think I'm naturally predisposed to hating King Kong.
So in the Kong versus Godzilla wars, you're clearly on the Godzilla side.
Godzilla smells a lot better is what I'm saying. There's no like oil glands on his body. He's not producing odor. He doesn't pee and poop. They're just a cloaca and it all comes out in one nice mess. I feel like they've all got the advantage over Kong.
Well, he lives in seawater, so he's constantly getting like water washed off, like cleaning him, like going through the water too, I think.
Yeah. He's a cleaner monster. That's what I'm looking for.
Oh, and also with his radioactive powers, I mean, when he blasts out he gets so hot when he blasts that out, that would kill any germs on him anyway, wouldn't it? If he's getting hot enough to blast out his radioactive breath.
And he's a source of energy too. So Kong, come on, not a fan.
In the Godzilla Kong movie that just came out, basically they had to admit that King Kong would just die from Godzilla very quickly if he doesn't have a tool. So they give him an axe, basically an axe that can shield, that also soaks up Godzilla lasers. So it gave him a fighting chance against Godzilla.
It does sound like a boss fight now, this movie.
Yes, yeah. Kong, the movie's on King Kong's side because he's the underdog in Godzilla versus Kong, which I did like. I thought it was a good movie. I mean, I'm not saying it's great. Skull Island, that's my favorite actual movie. It's full of great actors. And really quick, people have problems with that Godzilla 2014 for its slowness, and it is pretty slow. Bob, are you looking forward to Godzilla -1 coming out this year?
I didn't even know it was coming out or what it is.
Oh boy, well, Bob, it's the new Japanese Godzilla film that's coming soon. It's called Godzilla -1. It's not in the same universe as Shin Godzilla. It's a period piece, so it's set in 55 when the first movie came out.
Okay, I like it.
And also I'm interested because unlike Shin Godzilla, which took I think a year to come out in America, it's almost day and date release in Japan and America. Godzilla -1. Look for it soon, folks. Godzilla -1. King Homer shows up. His entrance is exactly like it. The shots of the big King Homer head are exactly like the shots of the big King Kong head. They are so perfect. I love every shot of Homer, of the giant Homer head.
Yeah, in fact, the stop motion is so good in the movie itself that when they cut to the non-stop motion King Kong face, it actually looks kind of bad. Because the stop motion is that good.
Eerie in how it's when a guy is in the mouth of King Kong being chewed on, that's where I think it stretches the credulity the most. I'm like, all right, that's just a guy sitting in his mouth. But then I say, this was 90 years old. I'm not above this movie. Also, lots of stuff looks shitty now in special effects when people have all the money in the world. They make shitty special effects. But here's another change. Instead of monkey stew, originally says, we can make hats. I prefer selling monkey stew to the army.
That's nice. The phrase monkey stew is funny.
Homer starts chewing on Lenny. I love his line, quit eating me.
This is a golden opportunity. If we get him alive, we can put him on Broadway. Dead, we'll sell monkey stew to the army.
Well, keep your hands to yourself, mister.
Now, we don't want to kill him. Shoot him around the groin and belly.
Hey, Homer, cut it out. Come on, quit eating me. Ow! Nice shot, Carl.
No!
All right, you big ape. Get a snootful of this gas bomb.
Yeah, just how Lenny is just not really that put off by this, and then kind of scolds Carl for shooting him.
Yes. Nice shot, Carl. No, I love how he once all that's over, then he's like, no, he is then desperately begging for his life as he's chewed on until he's dead.
Like I said, I love this as a kid, but I had not seen this kind of violence before, as cartoony and silly as it is. So just the idea of being eaten alive was placed in my head for the first time, I think.
Kong, he more chews on guys and spits them out. He chews on them, but it's rare he swallows I'm sure it's because the little puppet guys he has, they don't want to rip them apart, or also dismemberment was probably a line too far for them.
Maybe they don't actually go inside of his mouth. He doesn't swallow them. I think it was probably too technically complicated. There was already enough going on. It's can you just chew on it and just kind of drop them? So yeah.
And then stomp on him with a big reel. I mean, the arm, the hand and feet, too, which are all just to scale. Those are also so fun to look at, too, in the movie. So, Bob, I'm sure you bet that they changed the song Burns sang, too. I'm sure you figured that.
Yeah, the way he's posing, was he singing a Madonna song?
No, he actually was singing a song I had to look up, because unlike Cotton Hill and King of the Hill, I am not a fan of the Andrews Sisters. I don't know all of their songs. But he was singing their 1925 1985 song Don't Bring Lulu, which is a song about we're going to go to all these things, bring all these things to the party, but don't bring Lulu. She's no fun, basically. So he's, instead of singing a parody of The Fountain in the Park, which is strolling through the gas one day.
I guess 1920s was not old enough for a Burns reference, so they went back to 1884 for The Fountain in the Park.
Yeah, I don't know. The Andrews Sisters, you would think that would be public domain by that point, that song too. And yeah, those gas bombs, they are the exact gas bombs from the movie. Like, they are designed to look the same.
Again, a big disappointment. They throw one gas bomb. The explosion isn't great. Kong just kind of gently falls asleep. I was expecting just a barrage of gas bombs. They bring this huge crate with them everywhere, and they're constantly mentioned. It is so, like, they're really setting you up for the gas bomb scene when it's really nothing.
The way King Homer falls down is very similar to the falling asleep by Kong as well, yeah. And then also Smithers gets eaten, which wraps up that whole, that character story, which that's all in the script too. And so, speaking of things that aren't exactly the same, but I think they did some sort of change, because Dave Shutton here, it's first Dan Castellaneta, but then later when he says, what are you going to do, run amok in downtown Springfield? That is Shearer doing the Dave Shutton voice.
Yeah, I don't know if, like, how these lines were assigned to certain characters, but I think this is the first time I noticed that that character changes actors between shots.
This also is when there is another big change from the script, which is when they cut to King Homer at it, and Burns is saying what they're going to do. Originally, he says he's going to stand around for a bit, then an intermission, then stand around some more, then intermission, then we're going to play a Gershwin medley, and he'll listen to it appreciatively.
Hey, that's good too. I also like the implication of just the racist jokes that will follow with the ethnic comedy of Dugan and Dershowitz.
Which I would guess that it means it starts with like Irish jokes and Jewish jokes, and then goes from there in their ethnic comedy. Dugan and it's just also funny to hear Mr. Burns say Dugan and Dershowitz.
They really are underlining just, I mean, you're seeing the eighth wonder of the world, but you're not, like, when do you leave?
Yeah.
What is it, like, after seeing that giant monkey for so long, you're just like, all right, can we go now, honey?
That's what's great. Yeah, in the show, or in the actual movie, the show they do, you see what the director was going to do is like, I'm on stage, here he is behind me. Now, while you're staring at him and he makes noises, I'm going to tell you the story of how we caught him. And that sounded like that was mainly his plan of like, I'm just going to basically do an hour-long storyteller series while you look at the ape and I tell you the story.
Well, there should have been a separate press event for this, like a video game preview or something, because these guys should not have been standing in the wings taking photos during the performance with their giant flashbulbs. Unprofessional. Distracting.
I feel like word of mouth's also he doesn't need the publicity. I think word of mouth of the giant ape's gonna do it. I love how it's framed of like they're all backstage talking, and you're seeing the photographers go like, wow, look at that. But you don't get to see King Kong until he's unveiled to the audience in the big shot. And it is quite a big platform when you see it. It is impressive. Every time I think there's supposed to be a guy who points at King Kong in the actual movie. But yeah, I mean, what the director says on stage isn't that far from, he comes before you in chains for your own amusement. He basically is saying that. But yes, this is when King Homer makes his Broadway debut.
What kind of show you got for us, Mr. Burns?
Well, the ape's going to stand around for 3 hours or so. Then we'll close with the ethnic comedy of Dugan and Dershowitz.
Sensational.
Ladies and gentlemen, in his native land, he was a king, but he comes before you in chains for your own amusement. Presenting Homer, the eighth wonder of the world.
Wow! Look at the size of that platform!
I think you're making him angry.
Come on, what's he gonna do? Run amok in downtown Springfield?
That's basically the line in the movie too, except they say like, well, those are chrome steel. He'll never break out of them.
This is why Dave Shutton does not make any more appearances.
His scream and squish are so well done. I love that too.
So we get the scene that also like grossed me out as a kid. I Ren and Stimpy watching kid of him eating a child alive. Was this the scene? So I believe it was in Burns Der Coffin, Der Kraftwerk, where Bart sings Teddy Bear's Picnic at Moe's, and they wanted him to sing getting Good Ship Lollipop? Am I remembering this correctly?
Yes, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually forgot about that, but yes, that's all true. Yeah.
But they got Good Ship Lollipop for this episode. They cleared it.
It seems like when they had extra time to try again, they actually could get it. And it's the same song in the script, too. So they could get it. Yes, they get to kill Shirley Temple on screen, who was a contemporary of King Kong. The song they're referencing here is from the 1934 film Bright Eyes.
On the good ship, lollipop, it's a sweet trip to a candy shop where bonbons.
I'm dreading the reviews, I can tell you that.
Oh, hi, homie.
Nah, those Shirley, I think you've said it before when you, I think for some other podcast reason, you watched like an old Shirley Temple short. They're weird. They're weird. Their worship of the beautiful child is just strange to me.
I mean, I'm sure her movies were fine family entertainment, but the first things that she was in were called baby burlesques. And it's like, what if kids acted like adults? And it's like, well, we're going to actually make real children cry in these scenes. And it feels, I don't think they were treated very well. And it's kind of upsetting to see this.
Oh, yeah, very upsetting. You mentioned Will Sloan earlier. I saw him with a great reply online, actually, about a similar thing, how people were bringing up that within a year of the release of Wizard of Oz, also Judy Garland did a blackface scene in a movie, and people were like, oh, this is horrible. And it's like, yeah, it is an ugly scene, horrible to look at. But Wilson made the point of like, well, hey, you know, if it makes you feel any better, this teen was being forced to do this while not sleeping and being handed a bunch of drugs and eventually died a horrible death in her 40s. So hey, if you hate her, then you got your wish. Like, she died horribly. I wouldn't entirely put that on Judy Garland that she did blackface in a movie when she got to make no choices at all in her life back then of what she did in movies.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shirley Temple turned out maybe there's some story she's not telling us, and she can't anymore.
No, yeah. Now she's silent. She, unlike in the fictional world, she was not eaten alive, but lived another 70 years, and I think became a congresswoman at some point. I think. And also, by the way, that apparently the band Bright Eyes is not named after that song or even the reference to Planet of the Apes. It's just it's just a fun name, they say. We then cut to Marge and Burns. I love Burns. Like, I'm dreading the reviews, I can tell you that. So
yeah, great. This guy. I feel the Denham character, the director, it feels like he's never concerned, like, I'm going to be executed for this.
That's the funniest. Yeah, actually, to cut to the end of that movie, that's the funniest bit when he's standing next to the cop, like, and the cop like, well, we took him down. That cop should be saying, you're going to jail now. And instead, he's just like, well, you did your job. Great job, buddy.
Any pithy comment for us to close out on?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're right. Denham is guilty of like manslaughter of dozens of people. Like but apparently he could just say like, well, I was told the chrome chains would hold him in place. They're chrome. Yeah, also the smashing through the wall to leave the place, that's exactly like out of the movie too. And I love the shot of Marge in the big Homer hand. But of course the reveal is that this Homer is too out of shape to climb the Empire State Building, and in fact can only get up one story. and lightly falls to the ground.
Now this always happens whenever we I think I've quoted this a billion times, whenever we're like, is this person dead? And we find out he's not. I will say he's not dead, but his career is.
it's a great way.
Or if someone gets canceled, basically that's just how to refer to them.
Though now nobody's canceled anymore,
except hey, we just got a big cancellation in jail.
Oh, that was sure.
Hey, Danny Masterson, 30 years. This is coming out as the announcement happened.
Yeah, you're right. If somebody goes to jail, then I say the cancellation sticks.
We have to celebrate the small victories.
Yeah.
He's canceled from society, literally. He can't leave a prison cell. It's great.
And hopefully he'll actually stay in jail, unlike Bill Cosby. The climbing the Chrysler Building, there's a lot to unpack in that because it says Al Jolson ran amok at the Winter Garden. The Winter Garden still is open on Broadway as a theater. That was where Al Jolson performed many times at the Winter Garden, so it is an accurate Al Jolson reference. Currently, the musical being hosted there, Back to the Future, the musical.
Hey, I got to see that.
I kind of wanted to see that King Kong musical. I don't know if you've heard of that it happened recently. And its whole big gimmick is they have a giant King Kong puppet that looks pretty good. It's a perfect setting of when we get to the part set on Broadway, you're in a Broadway theater watching Kong on stage. So it's a clever idea. I haven't heard if the songs are any good, but the puppet apparently is pretty good.
I'm pro puppet in musicals, and I'm actually on the brink of seeing Little Shop of Horrors once again. And this time, there is a puppet. They're doing the puppet version this time.
Wow, man, you're very shop pilled, Bob. This will be your second version of it you're seeing in a calendar year, or in a 12-month period, right?
Mm-hmm. Hey, it turns out that it's performed a lot because it's very popular, so it's very easy to see. Look up your local Seattle musical places, Henry. Performance spaces, whatever they're called.
I'm gonna look that up.
Community theater. There you go.
Yeah. Well, and also as we know from the research on that episode too, part of it is that you only need 5 actors for it, or 6 actors for it. So it's if you're doing a small production, it's pretty easy to do too.
You look a little flushed. Maybe you should eat more vegetables and less people. He's not dead.
No, but his career is. I remember when Al Jolson ran amok at the Winter Garden and climbed the Chrysler Building. After that, he couldn't get arrested in this town.
Don't worry, homie. I'll take care of you.
Are you with the bride or groom? Right this way.
As well, though, the original line, so that line is there, but before that, Burns says, it wasn't beauty that killed the beast, 'twas the fall, and that trolley car that crashed into the small of his back. Which,
hey, I like that because everyone forgets it wasn't airplanes.
Yeah, it wasn't. But I guess since he isn't dead, they're like, well, we shouldn't have why have that reference? Let's just have the not dead. And all the weddings in there too. And by the way, Dick Cavett was not born in 1933. He was born in 1936. But the headline's funny all the same.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. Before you see the full spinning paper reveal, it says Woody Allen born, right?
Well, it's Dick Cavett's in the picture.
Right, but as the paper is spinning towards the screen, the joke they replaced is Woody Allen born.
Oh, I didn't catch that. When it's moving, it says Woody Allen. Oh, wow.
They replaced the joke, and I'll tell you why. Because Woody Allen was born in 1935. The paper is dated 1936. Dick Cavett was born in 1936. I think they were being sticklers for their own jokes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's actually them being even more sticklers than not. Oh man, that's impressive. Wowee. I mean, also in '92 were they not feeling like joking about Woody Allen? Perhaps.
Hey, the time was right to joke about Woody Allen in 1992.
Well, they're in an interesting position. We talked about it before on a podcast, but Marge Simpson's voice actor stands by Woody Allen and appeared in Woody Allen films several times after the bad stuff came out. I think it's sort of like their approach to Scientology, I think, just a little bit.
Well, he has made like 25 movies since the SUNY business went down, so that's about 300 actors.
He's just got a brand new one coming out now too. Yeah. Meanwhile, this ends with a wedding, which they even reference when we did the fortune teller marries the leprechaun, we did the same joke 11 years later. But in this case, this tells you, how did Mr. Bouvier die? He's eaten by Homer, and
I missed that. I missed that you actually see him before he's eaten in the pan across the wedding parties. You actually see that character design.
Yeah. I love seeing old Clancy there, who he just was a big part of the 700th episode of The Simpsons. Still looking the same, but I love how Homer slurps in the leg, and even in the script, it says slurps it like spaghetti. So, hey, and they made it look like spaghetti. So then it's time for the third sequence. This one is credited in the script to John Vitti. It's credited on TV to John Vitti and Sam Simon. In the script, just John Vitti. And I wonder when Sam Simon credit came in during the production.
Interesting. Yeah, this does feel like Bart Simpson's Dracula, in which we just threw something together about zombies. Enjoy. Because
exactly.
It's not about any particular zombie movie in general, although it does seem to be taking a bit from Return of the Living Dead, which is kind of a horror comedy, and it's great, by the way. I really recommend it. Have you seen this one yet, Henry?
No, I'm such a Romero guy. I never watched the Return ones.
Well, it turns out like about half of his zombie movies aren't very good, so you can go back to 1985.
Well, that's his fault for bringing down the average by making more of them after 1986.
Return is so good, and it really is the origins of zombies vocally wanting to eat brains. So it really comes from Return. Now I can't vouch for Return of the Living Dead 2 or whatever, but the first one has like also one of the best like practical effects zombies. The Tar Man, I think he's called, or the Mud Man.
I've seen the Tar Man.
It is like frightening. It's such a great effect.
No, I've say it every Halloween, but this scary season, maybe it's time to finally watch it. But yeah, I am of course a video store snob, so I look down on them because I heard they're funny, and they stole the Living Dead name from Romero, and he had to just call his movies Blank Dead or whatever, like Dawn of the Dead, and the Living Dead get to be these other movies. So I look down on them for that reason. But I mean, I love the Romero ones, but yeah, you're right. I think there are shots in this, especially these tilted angles of the camera, that I'm like, okay, this is Night of the Living Dead, the references. But I think definitely the magic stuff in it it's not magic in the Romero films. It's either unexplained or science.
I think maybe they explain it in later movies, but with Return of the Living Dead, it's like something is burned, and that gas is what makes the dead rise from the ground. So I guess it's not magic, but the idea of something like radiating from a source that makes the dead rise is from Return of the Living Dead. But
okay. But first, we have to hear about Nature's Candy, which if ever I hear anybody call fruit Nature's Candy, I think of an ashtray being thrown at that person. It's just
hope it doesn't happen very often.
Whipping ashtrays at people, like that is classic abusive behavior that you hear about in Hollywood all the time, from like say Scott Rudin in stories, or Harvey Weinstein. I think both of those guys are described as throwing ashtrays at people, among others. I think Elvis threw ashtrays at people. I think it's now ashtrays are not as handy. You can't just fling them around anywhere.
You just throw your vape pen at them with the big, heavy USB battery attached to it. You can kill somebody.
But that's hard to replace. An ashtray, those you can get like 5 a dozen, or a dozen for $5 back then. And then also in a thing that does not stick around, Ned pops in with an amazing Halloween outfit dressed as a zombie, and Ned loves Halloween, and he scaredly dares him. Do you take it as intentional that he's dressed as a zombie, and then Bart tells a zombie story, like it inspires his story?
Yeah, because he's like, if you think that's scary, I got a story for you. So it's just seeing a zombie is what causes him to think of like, oh, I've got a zombie story.
And so this is when Bart's going to tell his story after a couple more grandpa jokes.
Hey, hi, fellow Halloweenies. Did I scarily dare you?
I did. Darn it. Nice try, Mr. Flanders, but I've got a story so scary you'll wet your pants.
Too late.
From A Apple to Z Zebra, Baby's first pop-up book is 26 pages of alphabetic adventure.
Bart, you mean to tell me you read a book intended for preschoolers?
Well, most of it.
You have to read another book.
Dial Z for Zombie. That's another Hitchcock reference for Dial M for Murder.
Great, another great movie, and this has nothing to do with it at all. They just had a clever title. There's no phone involved.
When we last did this, I was really feeling zombie fatigue. How do you feel about zombies now, Bob? I'm not against them anymore.
I'm perfectly fine with them. I don't really seek it out. In fact, going back to how things have changed, in 1992, this was really my introduction to zombies, which is why I think Bart has to kind of give viewers the zombie rules, because zombies weren't really a genre that was in the mainstream. You couldn't go to Barnes & Noble and pick up Pride and Prejudice and Zombies off the shelf, right? People knew about Night of the Living Dead and things like that. But just like the zombie movies were few and far between, and yes, there were a ton of zombie movies on VHS, direct to VHS, that market, but very few were theatrical at this point in time.
But our late 20s and most of our 30s were all zombies all the time, in part because you guys heard us talk about video games a ton at the start here. We worked in video games, and in the gamer sphere, every other video game was zombies, or at least had a zombie mode in it, or things that were, if not officially zombies, worked like zombies, because if you're playing a game where you shoot things, zombies are perfect enemies.
Yeah. I mean, I don't turn. A lot of people I've come across have basically turned their nose up the idea of anything with a zombie in it. At a certain point in history, I could see that happening, but I think the zombie wave has really crested, and now we can just it's a welcome addition to our content minds. It's like, oh, a new zombie movie, and this one's good, or hey, they remade another Resident Evil game, and this one's really great. So I feel like we appreciate it more now that everything isn't just like jokey zombies everywhere. The stupid Zombieland movies. I feel like Zombieland was the peak of that fad. It's like, what if Bill Murray was in a zombie movie? It's like, well, who tricked him into this?
Well, and the Walking Dead series is technically over now, though it really is. They just called the next season a new show name, and it still has a lot of the same actors on it. But
yeah, I mean, I was reading the Walking Dead comic, so I was kind of into zombies as a concept, and people were doing fun things with it. But I feel like we had the wave, it crested, and now we're like in okay zombie territory again.
I also feel like maybe zombies come out as big deals when there's a Democrat in charge, so we should be in a new zombie wave now. But I mean, what are the horror? I feel like the horror waves now are just elevated horror, or I base it on, in the Scream movies, what they say is the current horror, and they talk about elevated horror, prestige horror, that kind of thing is the big deal these days.
Though this segment reminds me of something that happened to me in my life that I'm not sure if I ever talked about, because I had no idea about zombies, and it happened around the time of this episode, where the Night of the Living Dead remake, which is actually very, very good, it came out in 1990, and it's especially good if you have seen the first one, because it like subverts a lot of the things that happened in the first movie. The woman in Night of the Living Dead is not the helpless, catatonic screamer that she was in the first movie. It's like a really nice subversion of that trope. But it was coming out on video, and my mom was dating my stepdad, and he was a Blockbuster Video member, and we were going to rent Blockbuster videos, a store I had never been into, and because it was fresh out on video, there was a zombie in the store basically there to promote the fact that you could rent Night of the Living Dead 1990 on video. And it was me just encountering this concept for the first time and just saying, I cannot be here. I gotta leave. Sorry, guys. So I really think of that moment. Maybe that put the zombie thing in my brain. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, it's just like that horrible man that terrified me in the video store.
Wow, man. Definitely costume characters could scare me in places, but boy, I don't think I ever went to a place where someone was dressed as a zombie. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know who released the movie. Were they sending zombies to Blockbuster? It wasn't a Blockbuster employee. My kid memory is that it was very realistic.
I could bet that Blockbuster had some tie into it and was selling it. I mean, they could also legally sell the movie because it had no the original.
Right.
It had no copyright. Yeah, that's interesting. I did see my child introduction to it was, I think it got played on Nick at Night one time, and it started, and so I saw the beginning of it, and just the idea of, I didn't know what I was going to see, but just the beginning of it, of the chase through the graveyard, like 5 minutes into the movie, I was like, change the channel. That got me. If I'd seen one in person like you, boo.
And Matt Groening is a little stinker on this. He's like, it's not scary. Why do you think this is scary? And I've seen it a few times in the past, 20 years, and I do think it's unsettling. I mean, yes, it's a very cheap movie. It's basically like a Roger Corman movie almost, but the way that it's filmed makes it seem like you're just watching a snuff film, and anything could happen.
For sure, man. And especially even up to the last shot that is such a gut punch. You're like, wow, this feels just too real. But yeah, so then Bart heads to the library to find something else. He's looking at Where's Waldo yet again. Waldo books were all the rage then, or as everybody outside of the United States knows him, Wally.
Mm-hmm. It's wrong. Sorry.
I wonder if British kids, when they first saw this episode aired on Sky TV, if they were saying like, who's this Waldo chap? What's this all about?
I kind of want the cell of just Waldo prominently in the foreground on the beach, and the kid pointing to him in the background. That's just a great funny drawing.
He's just not trying this time. It's also a joke about a lazy writing too. They're just like, I'm like. But then Bart is called into the occult section, which has 666 on the Dewey Decimal. So here's another plus from reading that script. For the longest time, I would have thought this evil book was an Evil Dead reference. because we're both big Evil Dead fans, but I don't think they necessarily are on the Simpsons writing staff. I bet they've seen it, but I don't think it's one they like reference all the time.
It wasn't a popular movie at that point, and at this point, it was very hard to watch.
Right, yes, as in availability,
yes.
not like it scared everybody. Yeah. Oh, we mentioned about the video nasties earlier in the UK, for instance. Yeah. But actually, the reference is Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors.
Oh, when he's got, he opens his sweater and all of the faces are coming out?
Yeah, he's like, the children trapped inside me give me strength, or whatever he says. Yeah, it's because it says, quote, like the children trapped inside Freddy Krueger are the faces on the page. That's how they describe it. So it is intentionally a Dream Warriors reference.
Now, that is my favorite Nightmare movie after the first one, and probably the only other one that's worth salvaging.
Come on, Bob. 2. 2's fun.
2 is fun, but I think 3 is the most fun. And it's got a theme song by Dawkins. Look it up on YouTube, everybody, right now. Drop what you're doing.
Dream Warriors is a perfect song, and I love the music video, too. I love that they fight Freddy Krueger in it. It's so great. It's right up there with the Fat Boys fighting Freddy Krueger. I can't say which I like more. The soundtrack, the production values, the story, all of that is better in 3 than 2. But I love the homosexual intrigue of 2. I can't get over it. It's so great. I love how gay it is.
This is just speculation on my part, but wasn't there something about the director not understanding what he was making? But everyone else did. Basically everybody but the director understood what the movie was.
I have to direct our friend, double check this with Louis Peitzman, who is the previous guest and expert on this film. I think he had said, definitely it seemed like the actor and the writer and all that knew it. I could be misremembering, but I think the belief is that the director said that to distance himself from it when it wasn't done well. He's like, oh, they put all this gay stuff in it. I didn't like that. I think the director knew, though. That's my guess. But look up Louis Peitzman's oral history on the making of the film to learn it for yourself, guys. I've since forgotten this information. But yeah, so Bart gets the occult book, brings it home. We then get to see a wrongly colored picture of Snowball 1, which Matt Groening harps on the commentary, which is, it does lose the joke about why Snowball 2 is Snowball 2.
Yeah, Snowball 1 was named Snowball because it was a white cat, and that's why Snowball 2 is a black cat. That's the joke of the character's name that I think just is lost to time completely.
A white cat died. They needed to adopt a new cat, but they couldn't adopt a white cat, so they got a black cat, but the kids still forced them to name it Snowball 2. So it's a black cat named Snowball 2. It's a very Matt Groening joke. A good one, too, but completely lost to time.
But we get an origin of the death of Snowball 1.
Chapter 8, let's talk zombies. If a zombie bites you, you become a zombie. You must walk the earth feeding on the brains of the living until the spell is broken.
Bart, please. Don't you remember that Snowball 1 died 4 years ago tonight? Run over by the mayor's beer-swilling brother, Clovis.
Hey, maybe there's a spell in here that'll bring her back from the dead. Let's see what we've got. How to get your skeletons their whitest, selling your soul in a buyer's market. Ah, here we are. How to raise the dead.
Yes, yeah, this is back when we talked about in the previous episode that there was more references to the extended family of Mayor Quimby, and this is Clovis, which, I mean, what a huge, a far-fetched idea. A drunk driving Kennedy character? No, that'd never happen.
I feel like it's also kind of a sly Billy Carter reference. Like, oh, a politician has to have a drunk, embarrassing brother. But this could also be Ted Kennedy thing, too.
Well, and in a couple weeks, soon they'll have Bill Clinton's brother to talk about as well. I'm trying to think of the other brothers. It's like Obama has a brother who definitely gets a lot of headlines for not liking him. And then meanwhile, our friends on Chapo have brought to the attention to me Joe Biden's brother, the who just looks like Joe Biden except like slightly 6 months younger. It's a very it's eerie how similar Joe Biden's brother looks.
They're basically Irish twins, is what you're saying?
That's what it looks like. Yeah. See, I haven't checked their actual birth dates, but I think on Chapo they've joked that it's like he's the backup of Biden. Like, yes, he just looks just like him. This, like you said, when Bart explains zombies to everybody because they could not count on people understanding it, they head to the cemetery and then over to the pet cemetery. So this is also a Pet Cemetery parody too.
That's right. And like I thought they had fallen in love with this scene, the initial establishing shot of Bart at the grave, but really they had to put it over the credits to imply that it was content. There was some weird thing in the edit where they didn't leave room for a commercial after the episode ended, so they had to imply with the image behind the credits that the show was still continuing.
Which is a real trick, and I like how Gene admits, yeah, it's my fault. I was on vacation, and Mike Reese had to fix all that problem. Did you note this unintentional foreshadowing of Pinchy? There's a lobster grave that says "eaten by mistake."
Yes. And, of course, we have the graves of Fish Police, a show I still haven't seen, Capital Critters, check out our What a Cartoon on that, and Family Dog, which a show I watched, I think the first episode of when it was new, and I don't know if all of those aired. I'm sure it's easy to find out. That's also lost to time. These are things that are only basically available on YouTube now.
Yeah, Capital Critters has to be the worst, but someday we'll have to watch Fish Police. I feel like we gotta, as a What a Cartoon. As Al Jean says, part of the fun was oh yeah, all three of the pretenders or the guys who tried to draft off of our success were talking animal shows. So they're dead animals. That's part of the fun. I mean, it also is Simpsons meanness to kick them while they're down. They're like, hey, y'all got canceled. How you like it down there, boy?
So it wasn't this easy. No.
I mean, they all did think it was that easy.
Especially the Capital Critters guy. But now Bart is just saying, okay, the show's almost over. Here's 16 references.
Man, it's like he's trying to make us make this a 3-hour episode.
This took, it's going to be 3 hours, folks. We're staring at 2:30 right now, at least in the recording. And yeah, a lot of these things I didn't know because these are just pre-our era game show hosts. So should I go over these, Henry? I'm sure you might have some things to say, but so Cullen, Rayburn, Nars, Trebek, Bill Cullen, he hosted 23 game shows. The original version of The Price is Right, he's pre-Barker. He was known as the Dean of Game Show Hosts, but before our time because he passed away in 1990, but he died in July of 1990, so on his deathbed, he might have seen season 1 of The Simpsons.
I would bet not, but yeah, he coulda, yeah.
And Gene Rayburn, he hosted various versions of Match Game over 2 decades. We have Jack Nars. He hosted 7 Keys, Beat the Clock, Concentration, Now You See It, and You've Got to Be Kidding. And of course, Alex Trebek. We all know him as the host of The Wizard of Odds. And also Jeopardy for 36 years. So now his version of Jeopardy was a revival of a version of Jeopardy that ran from 64 to 79. And the Weird Al song, I Lost on Jeopardy, is based on this original version of the game show, which is why Don Pardo is in that song, because Don Pardo was the announcer of the 70s version of Jeopardy that did not have Alex Trebek.
That music video confused the shit out of me as a kid. This line also confused me entirely as a kid. I just through context, I was like, I know who Alex Trebek is. I guess the others are hosts, but Nars especially, that is such a weird, you would think you'd change your name if you were going to be a host of things from Nars.
Especially in that era, yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. Thanks for pulling all that up. I was like, I knew Gene Rayburn. When the Game Show Network was new, I didn't mind watching reruns of Match Game. They could be fun.
And one other thing to look for in this scene is that, yes, we have comedy tombstones like Family Dog and Capital Critters and, the lobster accidentally eaten. But if you look around in freeze frame, you can see just the names of regular people, which I assume are friends of animators, friends of background artists, friends of layout people. I didn't write them all down, but I tweeted about this prominently. You can see the gravestone of J.P. Blackmon, who is just some guy. And I mean, they were having fun, but I'm surprised Matt Grading didn't see this and get upset. I was waiting for him to get upset on the commentary, wait, who's this one guy?
I also like that they have, obviously, we as kids did not have LPs, so I didn't know that was a thing to wear one as a hat. But the extra comedy of that, Bart has the Thriller album that we saw him show to fake Michael Jackson, but then also Thriller is a song about zombies and the most famous music video about zombies ever.
And Michael Jackson, more of a threat than any zombie. Because he's real.
You wouldn't want to see him after midnight.
No.
But actually, as Bart seems to think he's not real a few years after this one, that it's just made up to scare children.
And I have more references here. Zabar, Kresge, Caldor, Walmart. Zabar, from what I could tell, is a famous deli in New York City, Upper West Side deli. Kresge, that's the name of a department store mogul. In fact, the K in Kmart is for Kresge. In previous versions of Kmart, had Kresge in the name. So
I can see why they just went with Kmart. Walmart's the only one that still exists, though, huh?
Yeah, Caldor defunct as of 1999. I think Kmart hung in there until like the late aughts, early 2010s.
I remember, at least where I grew up, Kmart was the lowest of the low. I was like, if we go to Kmart, that's because we couldn't find a birthday gift for somebody at Walmart or Target or even in the Winn-Dixie gift aisle.
It was definitely the most dilapidated of the local department stores. Now, my wife and I love to find these YouTube videos of just like ambient sounds or just like 10 hours of so-and-so music. And in searching for certain things, I get these suggestions now. And some of them are basically like 8 hours of Kmart in the 70s. And it is the actual music they would play with announcements in a Kmart.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So look those up on YouTube. You won't be able to stand it for more than like 10 minutes because it's just the most saccharine music. But it feels like what music in The Sims is parodying when you're buying things in that video game.
Somebody showed me recently some of their favorites of those, but it's like it's stormy outside and old music is playing through the door, and so it's like old music, but it's kind of muffled because it's like on the other side of the door.
Yeah, it's like it's the 50s and you're being driven home in a rainstorm and there's a radio playing in the front seat, and you'll see comments from people like in their 90s talking about how they remember this and those were the days and things like that. It's very sweet.
How many people have died listening to it now, and those aged people, like it lulls them into death.
They probably just switched that on in the nursing home.
Also, there is one cut of spells here. Right before he says the game show host, he says Prozac, Xanax, Darvon, Tums, which I'm cool with him cutting.
Yeah,
that.
I mean, honestly, these aren't funny. They're just clever, I guess. I mean, there's one naughty one that I feel like is the salvageable one, but these are just like cute at best. Three is enough.
To that.
Yeah.
Speaking of names, when they crack out of the ground, that's when we see tombstones for Jake Hogan and Wally Wolodarski, who are on the commentary, and they can point out, you misspelled our name.
Well, just Kogan, I think, because Kogan is on the gravestone. It's Kogan, and in reality, it's Kogen.
But it was funny to see them on there, and I was thinking it partially was because they quit during production season 4. Just this will come up more in later ones, but I reconfirmed this that like John Vitti said here in an old tweet, he put out like this picture is from their last day, the day we did this table read for Mr. Plow, which was Jay and Wally's last day. So by the time the animation comes back, they are gone. So I could see those tombstones being their way of saying like, they're dead to us now because they're not on the show anymore.
That's how Oakley and Weinstein slide in.
And we were all the better for it. That tells you how old politically correctness jokes are. That Bart says they prefer to be called the living impaired. Like, it's like, holy shit, this is 31 years old. They're doing these jokes.
Are the zombies going to tell me their gender now?
That's hey, don't misgender that zombie.
Yeah, it's like I wrote down in my notes, Bart is woke.
Them walking out of the cemetery, that's the Living Dead shots to me that we're seeing, and then them coming down the street. I love the way Ned goes like, I thought you were dead, but wow, like, oh, great line. But yes, in our next clip, the zombies are loose in Springfield.
Martin Prince, report to my office at once. And bring that big, juicy chess club brain of yours along with you.
Hey, kids, look what you can win in the Krusty Sweepstakes. To enter, send me your parents' brains. All right, parents' brains on a 3x5 card and send it to...
Homer, did you barricade the door?
Why? Oh, the zombies. No. Spare my family. Take me. Take me.
Brains!
But
Homer's kind of annoyed. Now, zombie Krusty is still savvy enough to know he has to follow proper sweepstakes protocol in that no purchase is necessary, so you can always send in a postcard with your name and address, and that counts as an entry.
I love that because I love that shot of the zombie holding up a sign that says parents' brains. That is such a funny image. I saw that as a sell for sale, over $1,000. Did not buy it, but I was like, man, that's a good sell. There's a couple more zombie funnies that were cut from the script. One, Lisa calls Chief Wiggum to warn him, and he says like, little girl, I think I know when zombies are here. And then he's eaten by zombies while he's on the phone with her. And then the second one, in the school, they have a couple jokes with Edna as a zombie as well. Now, I think The Simpsons got a message from Q warning us that the teachers are going to be eating their students in school. That's the conspiracy theory now.
All these secret messages that are completely obvious, but also don't tell you anything.
That's exactly how Q wants it. That's how. Also, that drunken technical difficulty sign. That's one of the funniest images in the whole series.
Yeah, out of all of, I love the Kent Brockman in the straitjacket. And also the puppies playing with the camera cords is good too, but I just like the drunk cameraman is great.
It's almost a libelous statement to the cameraman of like, oh, they're all drunk. That's the technical difficulties. So instead of Bart's lesson being how wrong I was to dabble in the black arts, instead in the script he says, this will teach me to never go to the library again. That was the lesson.
Oh, I like that more. I like that a little more.
Bart's delivery is more just like he's in an after school special, like how wrong I was. I thought it'd be fun to dabble in the black. I mean, I like that it feels like a preachy after school special.
And Homer is definitely doing the Terminator shotgun flip maneuver, right? I mean, the movie didn't create that, but it kind of made it iconic.
I think it's totally him, an intentional reference to it, and he looks so cool with his gun. This also feels like a get on Matt Groening's nerves thing to show Homer looking awesome, blasting people with a shotgun. My mom loves this line so much.
I thought dabbling in the black arts would be good for a chuckle. How wrong I was. I should have never read that book.
Wait, Bart. Maybe the library has another book that'll reverse the spell.
It's our only hope.
To the book depository!
Hey, Simpson, I'm feeling a mite peckish. Mind if I chew your ear?
Dad, you killed the zombie Flanders.
He was a zombie?
he was a zombie. They say it was Mike Reese's pitch.
Perfect.
But,
one of the all-time classic Treehouse of Horror jokes.
I just love that if Homer ever met Ned holding a shotgun in his hand, he would kill him every time. But
I wonder if it was partially gay panic too, because it's like Ned is asking to nibble on Homer's ear. So under the threat of that, he just shoots him with a shotgun.
It's also, it's funny too, when Ned is a zombie, he still makes slight cute turns of phrase because he's like, oh, chew your ear, meaning like have a conversation, but he also wants to literally chew his ear. So then talk about something that's not in the script. I feel like one reason stuff got cut from this is because they had to make room for like 30 seconds of Kang and Kodos.
I'm surprised this is not ADR. It feels like it was something added later, and maybe it was a retake or something. But I don't think this is great because there's no heightening. It's just they're gonna laugh. They're gonna laugh a lot.
Oh no, this is ADR. This is not in the script.
Okay, something feels. It feels like there should be something more here, but it didn't read to me as if there was lip sync issues.
No, I think it is based on the look of it. I think it's them from the end of the. Get a board with a nail that'll kill them all.
Okay, yeah. You know what? You might be right. It could be just Frankenstein out of another episode's footage.
Especially because they're looking at America from the space, which I think is the end of that one. But like,
the zombies have the Earthlings on the run.
Soon the human race will wither and fall, like the Earth plums we have seen on the observer scope.
like the Earth plums we have seen on the observoscope. Like, it's such a funny line.
I guess maybe something seemed missing because they can't really do anything but talk and laugh.
I think, too, it calls back to times where Gene has said, we forget to write them into the episode, and then we have to, like, add them way late. I think this is one of those times like, shit, if we don't have Kang and Kodos in this, then it doesn't keep the system going. It doesn't keep the story going. So after that scene in the script, they arrive at the school. Zombie Edna asks Bart for his homework. And he says, my dog ate it. And she says, lies. And then this is not a zombie movie, but she does the Donald Sutherland body snatchers point and scream.
Okay.
It literally says, like Donald Sutherland in Body Snatchers in the script. Homer is just an action star killing everybody who all happens to be buried in town. Doesn't this also remind you of the thing in the Treehouse from season 14 we just did, where it's like, oh, all of these old gunslingers are buried in Springfield?
And Kaiser Wilhelm?
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, but here Homer is re-killing a bunch of famous people.
Barney, not you too.
I'm not a zombie, but hey, when in Rome. Wow, George Washington!
Take that, Washington. Eat lead, Einstein. Show's over, Shakespeare.
Is this the end of zombie Shakespeare?
It's kind of like Sideshow Mel there with or Charles Darwin. It's the voice that Dan does for those characters.
I think it's intentional that it's Einstein who says "oi."
Yeah, with no lip sync. Just like, we need him to say something here.
So in the original script, I actually prefer the directness of "Is this the end of zombie Shakespeare?" But the original line is "The rest is silence," which is Hamlet's last line in Hamlet. So.
I like him making up just the quotes, not even referencing something. Just like, well, Shakespeare never said this.
So they head to the library. That's where they pull the book off the shelf. There's missing a scene where Bart puts the book back on the shelf at some point. Because he has it in the cemetery, then they need to go back to get it from the library. But it's like, at what point did he get rid of it after the cemetery? Here's more references. I assume they're all 70s detective show characters.
Yes, though Kolchak, the Night Stalker, I've heard is very, very good. Dana Gould's obsessed with it. It is sort of the precursor to the X-Files, although not very popular. And it stars the dad from Christmas Story.
Oh, okay. I like that guy.
Yeah.
Well, I dug into a lot of these when we covered Look Well, because Look Well is also a parody of these 70s cop shows. In fact, Banachek is the first one. Somebody's like, yeah, you played Banachek. No, that was George Papard. I played Bannigan.
And I think I recently rediscovered that Bookham Dano is from Hawaii Five-0. Oh, wait, Dano's in this. Sorry, this is the research I was doing for this.
Yes, yeah.
So Dano is not I guess Dano is a character, but Hawaii Five-0, the quote was Bookham Dano, and I guess that was a character. But there was a new Hawaii Five-0 for a long time.
A long time, yeah. It was, I believe it was that they had produced Lost in Hawaii for so long that when the show ended, all these production people are like, we've got an entire production thing right here in Hawaii. It's like, let's just do a Hawaii Five-0 reboot. And it was very successful. And apparently didn't have all the behind-the-scenes problems that Lost had based on recent tell-alls about the production of that. Which now, even more so, Bob, we never need to see Lost, because now we know that there was everybody was treated very poorly on Lost as well.
And hey, and also no resolution that was satisfying. And we've talked about this before, Henry, but when podcasts were first really getting started, everybody's podcast turned into a Lost discussion suddenly. It's like, well, I didn't turn onto this video game podcast to listen to your Lost analysis, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
you should be smart enough to know this is heading nowhere.
That so soured me on Lost, hearing it from some certain video game podcast at the time that I did enjoy. But I remember it was like the season 3 or 4 finale, and like somebody pulls a lever in the end of an episode, and they're like, I think the lever means this because you remember 4 episodes ago they said this line. It's like, this shit don't matter. Like they're making this up to hit a deadline.
I can say because I worked there, it was probably like 3 one-up podcasts that got completely derailed by Lost Chat.
Yeah, actually, I couldn't even nail down one. I know like 3 different ones I could name right now. But I still had a good time listening to those old one-up podcasts. But I think there were some times where I was like, okay, 15 seconds. Are they done talking about Lost yet?
8 minutes of Lost Chat. It should be 3 hours of Simpsons chat.
Exactly.
That's the normal amount of time to talk about a TV show. That's good.
Bart does his first spell with the names of 70s detectives. That turns Lisa into a snail, a giant snail. It's such a great design. You alerted me to the sad news that there's only one toy of this, though, Bob.
Oh, there's only one toy from this segment?
Of Snail Lisa.
Oh, I forgot that I alerted you to this
It's
news.
A Funko.
It's a Funko. I think that might have been Nina, actually.
Oh, was it? Okay, sorry. Thank you,
I could
Nina,
tell we look the same. It's easy to get us confused.
It was said to me in the same room. Sorry. Yeah, so Nina alerted me to this. They made a Snail Lisa Funko Pop. It's currently $12 on eBay if you want one. It was part of a whole line of Funko Pops from Treehouse. Treehouses get most of the variant action figures, which totally makes sense, and they're very popular. But it looks fine made for whatever it is. But it's like, I haven't kept up with Funko. I know in the lockdown there were stories of a bunch of Funkos like got sent off to an island somewhere because nobody buys them, and there was a huge stockpile of them. I don't know where Funkos are at currently popular.
I don't see them as much in I don't go to GameStops as much or big box stores that often, but I don't see them as often as I used to. So maybe the 10 years of Funko, the reign is coming to an end.
When I walked through the stuff that was on sale at PAX West, the video game con we both just appeared at and did a live podcast at, I didn't see as many Funkos for sale as I used to see it at nerd cons like that.
I think the dream is dead. After making $11 billion, it's time to wrap it up.
And then, yes, Bart lists condom brands.
Big laugh from my parents, something they wouldn't explain. And then, again, a teenage viewing. I figured it out.
I think it took a long time before I knew these were condoms. I was a very sheltered boy.
It might have been earlier than that, though, because I remember, like, you would go to, like, the Rite Aid or the CVS or the Walgreens or whatever with your friends to, like, buy comics or candy, and then you would, like, sneak over and, like, let's look at the condoms.
People put this on their dicks.
And they just and they just put them out on the shelves and we can see them.
Well, I feel like in my areas, I could be wrong, and maybe this is different in Florida now, though I bet it isn't different. I remember that the condoms were behind the counters and when I moved to California and saw condoms like literally on the aisles, I was like, whoa, they have condoms in the aisles? Like, it felt new to me. Like, I had not ever seen that before. But yeah, so that is the one that saves the day. A giant sky beam comes out and sends the zombies back to their grave, or some of them just start rotting in the streets. It's not very scientific. This did add my mistake to my lexicon, though. If I make actually, I should have just said when you said, that was Nina who said, I should have been, my mistake.
That's great.
My mistake. It's a good catch-all.
It's
especially
the Pilgrim and the Old West guy both being buried in Springfield.
I also love how it's how a guy, this is how like just dudes say things are a mistake, that he's like, excuse me, this is mine. It's like, this is your car of this make and model. And then like, my mistake. I'm definitely like John Smith, 1892.
About a decade later, we become a real my bad culture.
That also reminds me of the, I really like the line they give the crusty repairman earlier in the episode, how he says, here's your problem, somebody turned this to evil. Like, it's how a repairman goes like, I'm not saying who did it, I don't know, did you do it, did somebody else break it, but here's your problem, somebody forgot to turn the wrench all the way with your water main, or whatever.
It's being diplomatic.
They announced that it's just corpses rotting in our streets, which people love, yay! And all of the rest of these lines are the same, and this ending is the same from the script. We have one last bit of social commentary, as is fitting for a zombie production.
Trojan, Ramses, Magnum, Chic!
Seeing how?
Still pushing that boulder?
Uh-huh. Excuse me, I'm John Smith.
John Smith, 1882.
My mistake. The zombies that plagued our town are now just corpses rotting in our streets.
Well, I'm sure glad we didn't turn into mindless zombies.
Shh! TV!
Man, fall down. Funny.
Makes you think, huh?
It makes me think that they redid that ending for The Joy of Sect.
It's 6 years later.
Yeah, it's the you are watching Fox. We are watching Fox.
I kind of like that one better because it's almost like television, and Fox in particular intentionally brainwashes you to watch it instead of just like the TV is a thing you just sit still in front of, and it turns you into a zombie without you realizing it. But for an episode that begins with Homer daring you to turn it off, then at the end they're like, you're a fucking zombie. Think about this on your couch, fat loser. Like, you go out and do something.
But stay tuned for Martin.
Yes, don't you dare turn away from Martin. They already turned away from Drexel's class. Don't do the same to Martin, please.
Martin lived a much longer life.
And this is such a fun one, too, because this is the last one where it's just a one-off. Like, Simpsons, for the next few years after this, they'll make it a night of Treehouse reruns. Like, it's just one of many. But this is the third. Once they get to 4, then it's a full 2-hour block for the night. But this is the last one where it's like, oh, this is just like a new episode of The Simpsons. That's the Halloween special. I do think that some lines they improve for the better, some not. I think this has really good animation, but not the best. And I think last year's Halloween special was probably better. But
yeah, I hate to be too grumpy because at the same time, this is one of the best TV episodes of anything ever, just by virtue of being an early Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. But based on what bookends it, and especially, 4 and 5, the specials that come after, it just seems a little weaker in comparison. And they even say, like, oh yeah, like it just people didn't think it was funny. The screening, no one really liked it. So they had to do a lot of work. But I wonder if it was just their tiredness leading to a lack of confidence and just trying to fix it in any way possible by changing as much as they could from the original script. I want to go back to 1992, intercept that Korean footage, and see what it looked like as it was originally produced, because I bet it was still pretty funny.
I think, too, that lack of confidence comes in where they think that it's connected to by October when they get it in, or maybe late September when they get the footage fully in. That is when most of the writers have left. Gene and Reese know they're not coming back either, and there's even this thought of, all right, does Simpsons even still exist anymore after this? Like, that general thought is going around. So maybe that, too, is adding into their way of thinking, like just their worriedness and also rushedness of it too. But
yeah, it could be a matter of them thinking, yeah, they're going to bring in Merkin to get us to 100 so they can sell this show in syndication, and that's kind of it. So do we need to be that precious anymore with this stuff? We're very, very tired.
First and third are weaker as far as writing goes, but I still think they're full of amazingly funny scenes. The middle one is my favorite because now that I've just rewatched King Kong, I think it as a tribute to the 1933 film is gorgeous and full of amazing moments. So I'd still say it's a really good one, but when you compare it to Treehouse 4 and Treehouse 5 or 6 and 7, it gets blown away by those.
Absolutely.
Like, the next 4 kill this one.
Yes, and that's been our episode, everybody. Thanks for listening to Talking Simpsons. If you want to support the show and get all these episodes 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, please go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Sign up there for $5 a month. You can get just that, but also access to our vast catalog of miniseries episodes, over 150 full-length episodes that will become available the second you sign up for the Patreon. And we've covered on our miniseries things like Futurama, King of the Hill, The Critic, Mission Hill, and Batman the Animated Series. If you're on that $5 level, you also get, along with the entire archive, 1 new episode each of Talking Futurama and Talking of the Hill every month. And we really appreciate your support. We couldn't do this without you. And again, that is patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And there is a $10 level as well. And when you sign up for that, you can access all of the $5 stuff naturally, but also 1 mega-long podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher. And what is that, Henry?
Bob, you're talking about the What a Cartoon movie podcast, where we go into an animated feature film crazy in depth, just like we do an episode of The Simpsons, often for over 4, 5, or even 6 hours about animated feature films. Recent ones have included our Summer of Pixar that we just wrapped up, of Toy Story 4, The Incredibles, A Bug's Life, and Cars. This month, as you're getting into the Halloween season, you're going to be hearing us talk about Corpse Bride. That's going to be our one at the end of September, and we're almost at 5 full years of What a Cartoon movies. You sign up today at $10, you get all the $5 things Bob mentioned and the entire back catalog. I would say it's 200-ish hours now of exclusive What a Cartoon movies, covering everything from Akira to A Goofy Movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse to Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe, so many more, including like Nightmare Before Christmas. That's another great scary one that we did as well. Head over to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons to see for yourself everything you're missing out on.
And I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey, and I host another podcast. It's called Retronauts. That's a classic gaming podcast about old video games. You can find that wherever you find podcasts, or go to patreon.com/Retronauts and sign up there for 2 full-length bonus episodes every month. And by the way, I have a book that is out right now digitally, and it's coming out in paperback form on October 3rd. It is the Boss Fight Books volume of Day of the Tentacle. It's the complete oral history written by me about the classic LucasArts adventure game. It's being released on the 30th anniversary of that game. I'm very proud of it, so please check that out wherever you find books or go to the Boss Fight Books website to order it. And Henry, how about you?
You can follow me on Twitter at HENEREYG. I'm tweeting up a storm there all the time. Also, I'm on the Blue Sky. I'm on Instagram. I'm on all those places. And if you're following me and Bob, you should also follow on social media the official account of this podcast, which is at Talk Simpsons Pod on Twitter, on Blue Sky, and on Instagram. Check out at Talk Simpsons Pod to stay in the loop when new podcasts go live, when we've got new live shows going on, maybe even one related to Treehouse of Horror in the next month. You'll stay in the loop about those if you follow at Talk Simpsons Pod on all those social media sites. And of course, head over to TalkingSimpsonsPodcast.com for an easy-to-explore archive of all of our previously released free episodes.
Thanks so much for joining us, folks. We'll see you again next time for Season 14 Special Edna, and we'll see you then.
The muse of heroic poetry.
No kidding.